Good evening. I'm Mayor Dean Brookie, and I'd like to welcome you to this City Manager Finalist Public Engagement Session. This is a Zoom version of what would normally be an in-person meet and greet, allowing personal dialogue with each of our candidates. Due to COVID restrictions, we have tried to replicate that level of engagement via this method. The format for this evening will be a introduction of the candidate by our consultant Bob Slavin of Slavin Management. There will be a 5-minute introductory remark by each candidate. There will be approximately 30 minutes. Questions from 8 stakeholders within our community. Those questions have been reviewed and selected from previously submitted questions to Bob by Bob Slavin, to Bob and selected by Bob. And then the remaining time will be approximately 1 hour of questions from the general public. The questions will be randomly selected by Bob Slavin, and responses will be limited to approximately 3 minutes. We will end the session with each candidate with a 2 or 3 minute wrap up, allowing the candidate to have final comments. The method of response is the City Council is requesting members of our community to provide feedback on each finalist. All feedback will be considered. However, it is ultimately City Council's decision to appoint a permanent city manager. Please visit durangogov.org/city manager to find a link to submit your feedback. Because this is a public process, your name and address will be required to submit feedback, and all related correspondence may be subject to public disclosure. The deadline to provide feedback about the finalists is Thursday, August 20th at 4:30 p.m. With that, I'd like to introduce Bob Slavin, our consultant, and he will introduce the first candidate. We will wrap up the first candidate approximately 6:25, have a 5-minute break, and begin a similar process for our second candidate from 6:30 till 8 o'clock this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Bob Slavin, and I'm with a consulting firm that conducted the search for city manager of Durango. I'm proud tonight to introduce Jose Madrigal to you. I'll let him talk about himself rather than me do it for him, but he can do it better than I, and I'm going to be quiet and do that, and then we'll begin some questions.
Good evening. My name is Jose Madrigal, and I am very excited to be in this process for the city of Durango, Colorado. Durango is a very special place. Been able to visit it, and I think it's a very unique opportunity to really be a part of the fabric of the community there. I come from the state of Texas. A lot of my career has been in city management. I've got 18 years of experience in local government, city management experience, 14 years at an executive level. I've served as an assistant city manager at the city of Cedar Park for 6 years, as an assistant city manager level at the city of Irving for about a year and a half, and then as the deputy city manager most recently for 6 years at the city of McKinney. Currently, I am doing consulting work for many clients. I've done consulting work for the city of Irving, for the city of El Paso, and the city of Brownsville. What I'm looking forward to is when I looked at Durango is it's really a place that my family has really found to be enjoyable. We have a history there. My wife, when she was growing up, would always go out to go camping in Colorado, and specifically in the Durango area when she was growing up. She's also actually done some work in the Durango area in public transportation for the Southwest Colorado Councils of Government. And it was always a really special place, in one part where she was like, if we ever had the opportunity to come up into Southwest Colorado, it'd be a really awesome opportunity. We should take it. Well, lo and behold, the city manager of Durango position came up, and we spoke about it. And I think it really has a lot of some of the issues that you're facing are some of the strengths that I provide. I have a very strong strategic planning background. I've been very heavily involved in strategic planning and key performance indicators. Financial transparency is another very strong suit of mine. Being able to deal with transparency issues and really begin to bring it to rebuild trust with the public. And I've had some really great successes in my time at the city of McKinney, receiving 5-star transparency awards with the city of McKinney, as well as began opening it up with management innovation awards from the Texas Municipal League on financial transparency. So when I looked at the recruitment brochure, I really saw a match and a fit that I could really bring in to the city of Durango and really help continue on the great legacy that y'all have there and the great uniqueness that is brought.
We're at about time.
Oh, thanks, sir.
He should have 5 minutes, and I was just showing that he had 2.5 minutes left.
Okay, well, I'll keep going. Yeah, it's a really great opportunity. There's a lot of things that really bring out to it with myself included. One of the things that I really also bring onto it is I've had the direct ability to manage every municipal facet of local government, except for electric utility provider, but police, fire, human resources, finance, IT, public works, capital improvement projects, every department, even including an airport. I've had the opportunity to manage and have direct success. So I really do see myself primed and ready to be able to help the city of Durango and really be able to really assist the city of Durango moving forward. And I'm really excited about the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll begin the questions now. The first set of questions is from stakeholders, a group of primarily business folks, and who have provided questions. And the first one is from the Durango Business Improvement District. And the question for you, Jose, is how do you envision working with local economic development organizations like BID, Durango Chamber of Commerce, Local First, La Plata County Economic Development District, et cetera?
The first most important part is really going out and meeting with each one of them and setting up regular meetings and receiving feedback with all of the different local stakeholders in economic development. I do have a background in economic development. I've had some success in economic development ventures, and I would like to see kind of what their thoughts are on the process of what economic development would be, some key hits for Durango, some of the history for Durango, what are the things that have done well, specifically in regard to the partnership between the city, and asking three really specific questions is what has the city done well? What has our partnership done well with the city of Durango? What are some of the things that we can improve? And are there any programs that we need to stop doing that haven't been proved to have been very effective? So it's really starting those regular meetings with each one of the organizations and making myself readily available to continue to have meetings and discuss what are those opportunities that are out there and what are their expectations of the city. One of the biggest things that I've seen is I'd really like to begin including them in a strategic plan for the city. When we look at what the city does, the strategic plan really is the backbone of the work contract that I see that the city has with the public and with the community. It tells about the entailing of the plans, of the goals, and how we're going to achieve the goals for the city council and the city of Durango, and really want to begin to bring in these local groups and bring them into our strategic plan so that we can start looking at how we're going to measure success and what the city can do to help and involve in getting to that success, and also what are some of the expectations we have of those organizations to help out within the community.
Next question is provided by Visit Durango, Rachel Brown, the executive director. And her question is, COVID-19 has put Durango, the destination management and marketing organization, between a rock and a hard spot. Tourism is the largest contributor to Durango's economy, about 30%, and most businesses, especially hoteliers, rely on visitation to maintain revenues. However, residents fear that visitation could bring more cases of COVID-19. How would you recommend that the DMMO balance these priorities and address concerns raised by both groups?
That's a really great question. And I know when we look at tourism and how it's being affected by COVID-19, you're seeing those effects for a lot of cities that have tourism industry focused in their revenues and in their projections. What I would do is coming into Durango is, first of all, meet off with Visit Durango and really have those conversations of what they see as the challenges that they're having, and really begin to partner with the local health authorities that are within the community, and really talk about some things of how we can set up some portions of, if tourism comes up, of what are some of the safe practices that we can continue to do. When we're in Durango, one of the things that we noticed coming from Texas to visit was that how safe and how effective the measures were that when we were there. I mean, coming from Texas and going to Colorado, seeing that everything was at a 50% occupancy and everybody wearing masks really helps. And I think using that public outreach and continuing to really emphasize about being safe, wearing masks, keeping the occupancy down to a level to where the businesses can still be successful, but also that we're continuing to save the residents and the citizens of Durango. I think there's also a big opportunity looking at just some of the research that I've done in Durango is having a lot of people coming in to visit, looking at hotel stays for longer periods of time, for 3-6 months, with the virtual learning that a lot of bigger cities or inner cities are doing, people from Chicago and New York, has really opened up a market to come into Durango, and people beginning to stay there for much longer. So looking at some of those challenges and how we can help as a city in getting out that public education component to really help them decide of how we can help those businesses and how we can really reach out. When I look at the position of the community is to be out in front, meeting with the public, meeting with the business owners, working with the tourism industry, working with Visiting Durango, and talking about some of the ways that we can help them accomplish those challenges.
Get into this button pushing thing here. Thank you. Next question is provided by the Economic Development Alliance, Michael French. And the question is, what do you believe should constitute economic development pillars for a community like ours, and how do they get addressed with tight budgets and competing priorities?
When I look at what are the economic development pillars for the city of Durango, one of the things that I've noticed, and I'm going to kind of go back to it, and it'll be sounding like a kind of a broken record, but I think it's really imperative, is there's a gap, I think, for a really strong strategic plan that really emphasizes and talks about what economic development is. And I think when we look at those pillars and really founding those formations of what are the foundations of economic development, it can be so many different things. And I think my experience in economic development is very varied. When I was in Cedar Park, it was about entertainment and bringing a hockey team and a concert venue. When I was in Irving, it was about bringing businesses into the community, corporate relocations. When I was in McKinney, it was really about startups as well as bringing in some of the small to mid-sized businesses. But what I took away from that experience is it really depends on what the community charm and the community character is, and what is that community, what I call the identity of the community. So when I look at those pillars, I think coming into Durango, it's my job to reach out to the Economic Development Alliance and really talk to them and decide kind of together jointly, the city working in partnership with the Economic Development Alliance, with the county, with the citizens and with the community, to identify what those pillars are, working with the council and talking about what their expectations are, and really start defining those pillars. I think from my component, where I look at as a city manager, is really to continue to help use the city organization in a way that we can continue to enhance economic development, but we're working in partnership. So I would really like to be able to reach out and make those continued relationships with economic development, with the council, with the county, and really decide and talk about what is the community character is, what are some of the hits and misses that we would like to capitalize on, what are some of the things that we know we could fit here in Durango. And some of the conversations that I've had with the economic development area is that I know one of the biggest challenges is Durango is a place where it's a really great incubator, that they said, and you start a business there and it gets really good, and as soon as it's ready to bust, they end up leaving to other bigger metropolitan areas. So I look at that part as a challenge of, when I look at least one pillar that I would see for myself, is how do we engage that challenge? How do we keep those businesses local? I mean, what are some of the things that we need to do? Some of the challenges on affordable housing and bringing affordable housing into the market for young professionals, giving them an ability to be able to attract more young professionals into their organization. So I see some of those areas of going through it, but the pillars I look at as making sure we have the community identity, working together in a strategic plan.
About 30 seconds.
Focusing on what those key performance indicators are that we're all in agreement to, that we're going to hold each other through, and continuously regular communication between all of the groups.
Thank you, Jose. Well, we're back to Tim Walsworth's Durango Business Improvement District. We'll ask the second question that he provided. What are your thoughts about downtown Durango? What does it need in your opinion, and how will you make that happen?
So my thoughts on downtown Durango is it's a beautiful, beautiful site. I mean, when you go down there, I think when you look at the restaurants, the different avenues and different things that it provides, I mean, we had such a great time. When I looked at coming into Durango, we stayed, I believe it was 4 nights, and it still wasn't enough. And I still don't even feel like I really got to see all of Durango, even though the mayor and the council gave me such a great tour. I still feel like there was just so much there to continue to go through. So I think that's the part of when I look at the downtown side, is like, it's really going to take a while for you to really see everything that Durango really has to offer. There's just so many great things, so many restaurants that were recommended I just didn't have a chance to go to. So I look at it as the variety that the city of Durango provides, the ability to be really family friendly. The ice cream shops were awesome for the kids. The gift shops were just, amazing. The tourism industry that's already coming in there for the recreational opportunities really drives a lot of business to the downtown side. So when I look at, what is it that I saw that it missed, I'm not sure that there's a lot of things that are missing per se, but what I did see is some opportunities or some challenges, I think, is really looking at the development and how do we continue to bring in a little bit more what I would call density for some commercial businesses into the area. Sometimes you would see some hard corners where you would see maybe probably not the highest and best use for that corner that could really continue to spur some businesses and some professional opportunities for employment. And when I looked at downtown, it's like that was the big one that I saw was really how do we get some more of those offices, some more companies, some more locations into the downtown area. That's where I looked at as one of the challenges or the opportunities that I think downtown provides.
Thank you. Next question is a second one from Rachel Brown at First Durango. Visit Durango. And the question is, many stakeholders in the community hope to increase the city's lodgers tax in 2021. The stakeholders of this increase include the lodgers, Visit Durango, the Durango Creative District, and the Convention Center Steering Committee. Additionally, City Council has discussed using the tax revenue for transportation and affordable housing. How would you balance the priorities of these various groups and reach a consensus among these stakeholders?
When you look at the different groups, and I think it's really important is listening and trying to, when you look at a lot of different opinions, and I think even for a city manager, the biggest key in communication is listening, trying to find what those commonalities are for each one of those groups, really listening to find out where you can find places where each one of them are agreeing and how you can bring things together. And as a city manager, when I'm looking at working with those or proposing plans to help with the lodgers tax or to show what are some of the things that could possibly happen with the increased revenue, it's really imperative that we look at making sure that all of the stakeholders are receiving or looking or being able to receive some sort of a benefit if it is increased, that we're not just using revenues just for one side, but that everyone's being able to see it, the hoteliers, public transportation, the businesses, the restaurants, the nightlife, the gift shops. So it really is from a vantage point, I think from the city manager side, for me is to listen and find those commonalities to be able to direct of, oh, here's a way that we can make it a win-win for everyone. And that might mean that some people don't get everything that they want, but everyone receives a benefit out of that. And I think that's where we look at as really the heart of local government, is trying to make sure that we're doing the most to help the most people.
Thank you. Next question is a second one provided by the Economic Development Alliance from Michael French. The question is, what do you believe is the best strategy for a city of our size to take on economic development in our community, in both short and long term?
The best strategy really is there's two things that I would say, is making sure that every party who's doing an economic development is working on the same page. And I'm going to go back again, unfortunately, but a strategic plan where we're all pulling on the rope, but pulling in the same direction and making sure that we're all together, the county, the city, the Economic Development Alliance, the business community, making sure we're all working together for the same group, for the same goal, and that we're all in agreement. I think that's where you really start seeing the results. The second part of that is I have always looked at economic development and really been specific. I think I've seen a lot of things where you really look specific targeted industries of what fits your community and what you're looking for is where you really see the results. For example, in Cedar Park, it was a town when I got there of 40,000, and the council had a goal and the business community had a goal of really bringing in that entertainment venue of a hockey arena that could also do concerts. Very specific. But it took us 2 to 3 years to get to it, work through the process, but we're able to get a AHL hockey team and a concert venue where you have multiple acts coming in and providing. And so I think it's really getting into those goals and getting specific into that portion of this is what we want for the community. From my experience, where I've seen some economic development misses, I wouldn't actually call them failures, but what I see is where you kind of do a shotgun scatter approach where you're just reaching out for any business that can come into the community. And I think what ends up happening when you do that and you're not singularly focused on what it is that you exactly want for your community, you start getting things that really don't fit. Some businesses that just didn't seem to make the mark, hit the mark. People become a little disappointed of, whoa, we didn't really think that's the kind of company we want to go into. So I really look at it as getting that strategic plan together, making sure we're all coordinated, heading in the same way, pulling on the same rope, and that we're really specific about the industries that we're looking to attract and the type of businesses that we want in Durango.
Thank you, Jose. Following questions are from a list that were provided by Tim Walsworth at the Durango Business Improvement District. And I am assuming they came from some of their membership. First one is, what are your thoughts about downtown Durango, and how can the city help with beautification?
Okay. I think I talked a little bit about downtown Durango, so I'll kind of leave my comments of where I thought on that for another question. On the beautification of downtown, I mean, I look at it and I was like, the scenery is very beautiful. I do see that there's probably some opportunities with some pedestrian and multimodal connections into the downtown area a little bit more, to where we can really promote that walkability to go through, or some of the things that I looked at right off the bat that kind of came to me of just making it a little bit more pedestrian friendly and really encouraging that place of growth where you wanted to go through. Those are some of the parts where I looked on beautification. I think when you look at Durango and its parts of arts, I think some parts, if you could include a little bit more public art in some areas that are really strategic, that would work. I think I've seen a lot of impact with that in downtown areas that I've been able to be with, of really including public arts and even public park space within the downtown area. Not to say Durango doesn't have it. There's obviously some parts into that portion. But I think when you look at the beautification side of downtown, I think downtown's very beautiful, specifically with the mountains in the background and every portion in it. I mean, I looked at it as one of the most beautiful places to be when we were having dinner with my family. We all enjoyed it, but I did see a couple of things there. And I think the city can help in with looking at some of the plans that we could look at in a downtown district plan of doing some beautification improvements, maybe looking at some places where we could do that public art, maybe where we could increase some of the pedestrian mobility into the downtown area. And maybe even looking at some areas where we can do some public gathering spots where people can gather together.
Thank you. Next question comes from that same list. Do you think Durango needs some version of a conference center facility to attract a different type of tourist here and during the week and in off-season times?
I think when I look at questions like that about the community of what I think Durango needs, as a role as a city manager, I think it's really important to check in with the community first and get the input from the stakeholders that are in there, the council, the business community, also the lodging community, the residents and the citizens. And so when I look at questions for that portion of it, I would look at through my 100-day plan, meeting with stakeholders and really talking and discussing and seeing if that's something that really resonates with a lot of the different stakeholders that I meet with, of if that's a goal that the city of Durango wants, is a conference center. And if that's something that I think seems to be something that I'm hearing from a lot of different stakeholders in the community, I think it's an appropriate portion for me to talk about that and discuss that with the city council about possibly making that as a strategic goal or strategic plan issue item to go through. But when I look at a conference center, that's really a community decision and a community buy-in, and it's important for the city manager perspective. And my role in that is really getting my finger on the pulse of the community and having those informational meetings where, if that's the feedback I'm getting, looking for avenues and looking for ways where we could make that possibly happen, and meeting with the city council and seeing if they're hearing the same things too, and being in lockstep with the city council if that's something that they would like us to do. And if they do say, yes, that's something we want to place on the strategic plan, then by all means, we'll start as a staff, begin developing a plan to make that become a reality.
And the next question, what would you do as city manager to create more housing, especially multifamily housing, to increase the supply of rental units?
Was that multifamily housing, Bob?
Yes.
I didn't. Okay.
Yes.
Multifamily housing it's a very challenging place to do multifamily housing, specifically when you look at next to single family residential areas for a lot of different places in a lot of different communities. There's sometimes a barrier when you looking at multifamily homes. I think what we really need to do and what I've talked about is really meeting with the community and talking about multifamily and seeing what their ideas of multifamily are. Because when you look at multifamily, it's such a broad term and there's so many different things that can fit into multifamily. You could do vertical mixed use, you could do horizontal mixed use, you could do no mixed use and just have pure multifamily. So I think for the economic development proportion of it, if the goal is to attract businesses and to continue to be a full generational city where we're having young professionals come in, multifamily is going to be a big component of how we can make that happen. Now, with that being said, to make multifamily a reality, it's going to take having meetings beforehand and talking with the development community and seeing what challenges they may face in doing multifamily. But most importantly, talking to the community and seeing what they see about multifamily, seeing what some of the challenges are of why if somebody would be for or against, but really having that community outreach and having neighborhood meetings and really getting out there and discussing with them of what makes sense for them in their minds for multifamily and how do we get that through into a place where it can happen in Durango that everybody is excited about it, everybody thinks it's providing a benefit to the community, and people can get really behind it.
Thank you. What is your vision for the city as we emerge from the COVID-19 crisis?
Vision for the city is to be an excellent to be a model of sound financial governance, as well as being resilient and resiliency. And I think that's the biggest portion of as we coming out of COVID-19 is lessons learned and what can we take from those lessons to make sure that if a pandemic were to happen again, hopefully not, knock on wood, but if any other challenges are out there, I think what we're really seeing in local governments right now and what some of the things that I've been working on with some of my clients is really talking about some of those things. Okay, we're in this COVID-19, we're going to get out of it, but what are the lessons that we've learned to make sure that if we do have to do virtual government, what can we do virtually? Our financial areas, what are those fund balances looking like now? Is it really at the 27 to 32% that's recommended through some of the financial areas that I've been into that I've always held? Do we need to put a little bit more? What does it work for our community? What do we see as some of our vulnerable threats? And I think it's a really great time for local governments as we go through this is also to take care of the COVID issue and to address it, but also let's not lose focus on that farther plan out of making sure that we're resilient and we learn lessons and we go through an analysis. And as directors and as a city staff that we're meeting together and talking about what are some of the things that we could do to help prevent ourselves from going through this crisis again, or that may better help us get through it financially and look at some better ways to possibly do business and how do we change the way that we operate. Because I think when you look at COVID, it's going to change the way that we operate. And I want to make sure that as my vision in the city is to have sound governments and the ability to be a resilient, a leading local government and resiliency in the country.
Thank you, Jose. Mayor, when are we going to switch from the stakeholders to the community? Are we about out of time?
We've got about 10 more minutes. However, that's not strict. We invited four other stakeholders. Fort Lewis College, I know Tom Stridicus is perhaps listening in. Durango Fire Protection District, Chief Dowdy, Chamber of Commerce, Jack Llewellyn, and San Juan Basin Health, Leanne Jalan. Leanne, I know, is on another Zoom right as we speak, and as well as Tom. I was going to see if we might find if Chief Dowdy or Jack Llewellyn is in our audience that could just pose a question in the remaining time. If so, Mitchell, do we have ability to have them raise their hand and pose a question?
I do see Ms. DeGiorgio raising her hand, so I will allow her to speak.
Excellent. Monique DeGiorgio with Local First.
Hi, and I know you didn't mention Local First, but we did submit a couple of questions. If it would be okay to ask one, that would be awesome.
I believe we had one from you, Monique, but feel free to, if it's already been asked, we'll let you know.
Okay, great. Yeah, I don't think that we've asked any from Local First. We would love to ask Mr. Madrigal how he feels the local independent business community, what role local independent businesses play in the city of Durango, and how he sees local independent businesses supporting the overall kind of prosperity in Durango?
Great question. I look at local independents, local independent businesses as being really the backbone of Durango, and it's one of the great things that I saw when I was there in Durango was just the amount of local businesses that were within Durango that were very unique and special to Durango. You didn't see those businesses out anywhere else, and I think when you look at the local business market, especially those independent businesses within your community, those are really the ones that kind of drive your community and the overwhelming, health and criticalness of your business climate. And I think it's really important that they have a major role, and that we're finding ways and avenues to communicate and really trying to figure out how the city can partner with the local business community, at all times, and trying to help them through specifically in issues that we're facing today with COVID-19, but also issues in how we can continue to help them grow, how we continue to help them expand, how we can continue to help them with their challenges. When you look at communities and you really start to see the home run hitters in your communities, it's really that local business that they're continuing to find opportunities to expand and continue to be prosperous. And so critical role that they play, and it's critically important for myself to make sure that I'm continuously helping myself and having regular meetings with the local business community to make sure that they're getting feedback back into with how we're providing services, either through annual surveys or point of service surveys, to make sure that any types of concerns they may have, that we're at the front of those concerns and not to where they become a real big issue, but also that we continuously have that feedback loop. And I think that's essential with any community, to make sure that we're tapping in to the local business community and making sure that their needs are being met.
Thank you, Jose, and thank you, Monique. Mitchell, I'm going to ask if there is in the wings perhaps Chief Dowdy or Jack Llewellyn or Leanne that might have a question to pose. If not, I believe we can ask another question, have another question posed by Monique.
I do see Chief Dowdy, and I will allow him to speak right now.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Chief Dowdy, you can unmute yourself if you want to speak.
Gotcha. Can you hear me?
You bet, Hal.
Okay, great. Hey, we've got a unique situation with the fire protection district here. We are contracted with the city of Durango. And so while we're not a department of the city, we are the city's fire department. We've got a pretty drastic need for a new downtown station to serve the busiest area of downtown Durango. I'm curious about your thoughts with that, and how do we prioritize a non-city project that is absolutely critical infrastructure for the city?
Okay. Fire station development is absolutely critical. Working at the city of McKinney, I supervise the fire department there for 6 years and understand completely the ability and the need to have stations spread out to be able to respond in the normal call response times that are necessary. When you look at the development of a fire station, specifically one in this nature, where it is a little bit different because it's in a partnership with the city and not actually a city function, it really would be working with the city council and making sure that that is a goal that they see also important, and working with being that conduit between to yourself, the fire chief, as well as the city council, and talking about some of the benefits that we would be able to receive by having a fire station, what it helps for the residents do in regards to response times and the service level that they'll be able to provide by having a fire station downtown. And working with the council on a strategic plan, especially when you look at public safety, safe and sound communities is always a good goal to have included in your strategic plan. And if the council is for the idea of having that fire station, after hearing what the benefits are that can be provided, it's definitely working in partnership and deciding with budget allocations if there's things that the city can do to help out, or what are some of the areas that we can partner together. But it really it's going to take a conversation and being the conduit of being able to have that relationship with the fire department, the fire district, as well as the city council, and bringing some of those issues together so that we can talk about them and have an open discussion on some of the benefits and some of the ways that we can partner together to make things happen.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Jose, and thank you, Hal. Bob, if you have any more questions first, I'd like to just assure that either President Striticus or Jack Llewellyn or Leanne are not in attendance and would like to pose a question. If not, perhaps you have one more from the previously submitted.
Mayor, I do have someone raising their hand labeled San Juan Basin Public Health.
That would be Leanne, probably, or a representative from San Juan Basin. That'd be appropriate. Thank you.
Okay. San Juan Basin Public Health, I have admitted you to speak.
Thank you, Mitchell. It is Leanne, and sorry I didn't have my name in. My question, thank you, it's nice to meet you. My question is, what would you identify as some of the health concerns that, I'm representing local public health, and I'm curious, what would you identify as health concerns that could be addressed in partnership, local public health and municipal government? And what would you need from your local public health association to be successful in addressing those?
Okay. When I look at health department area, one of the areas that actually had a health department experience was with the city of Lubbock. We did have a health department within our city organization. And one of the biggest ways that we saw that we're able to partner from the health department and from the city's perspective is really to get out information to the citizens when communication comes through with things such as COVID, and how we can partner together with providing some of those guidelines out there of how to continue to keep themselves safe. Whether it's, wearing masks and PPE and, staying away from 6 feet, social distancing, really becoming that communication arm to help with some of those areas that you're seeing rising cases in. One of the ones that we had also in Lubbock that was coming up was immunizations and helping people get immunized when they were at low income, and really becoming the foster of being able to communicate that information out to the community. And that's kind of how I see the majority of the ways that the city can help, is really beginning to be that avenue to help communicate. The more communication we can get on social media platforms, working together and having communication strategies and campaigns, the better off that we can be. And I think that really starts helping by, also having those regular meetings and making sure that we're having communication back and forth. So if there's things that you're seeing that are coming out to there, if there's outbreaks of whatever virus or infections that may be coming out, that we can work together in a joint communication PSA to the citizens to try to help you begin to contain whatever challenge comes our way.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you, Leanne. With that, Bob Slavin, I think we need to move into the public questions. There's been a number of comments, questions posed to Bob from the public, and Bob has selected a random, or we'll be pulling questions randomly, and I'll turn it over to you, Bob, for the next 40 or so minutes. I might just do a plug for anybody listening that we do want your comments for both candidates, and that would be, those can be submitted to durangogov.org/citymanager. And because it is a public process, your name and address are required to submit the feedback, and all related correspondence may be subjected to public disclosure. The deadline to provide feedback about these finalists is Thursday, August 20th at 4:30 p.m. And with that interruption, I'll hand it back to Bob and Jose. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Questions, there were 43 submissions provided to the city through the portal. Among those 43, from those 43, there's probably 70 or 80 questions, because some of the submissions had more than one question. So I have all of them in a bowl next to me, and I'm pulling them out randomly. I just pulled the first one out. When there are more questions on one submittal than only one, we have decided to pull that out, ask the first question on that list, and then insert that particular questioner back in the group as if it had not been asked before. And if it happens to be randomly selected again, we'll ask the second question. So with that process established, the first submission is from Matt Robinson. And the first question on this submission is, what kind of activities do you undertake as a neighbor and a citizen?
Kind of activities, I'm reading that question right, is what kind of activities would I undertake as a neighbor and a citizen within the community of Durango? So I just want to make sure I say that that's kind of where my answer is going to be coming from, is really to be a part of the community. We have 5 children, so we have a pretty big family. We're a blended family. We have kids from 2 stepdaughters that are 13 years old. I have a son that's 13 years old, another son who's 10 years old, and then we have a baby girl that, well, not a baby anymore, but I still consider her a baby girl who just turned 3. So when we look at some of the activities that we're involved in here, and that we would continue to be involved in Durango, first and foremost going to be youth activities. Those are some of the big activities that we are. My sons play soccer, our girls are at dance, and so we're really out involved in the neighboring communities. Some of the things that we like to do is partner and give time in community service, whether that's through our church. We've done some things here with a homeless shelter home for families. And we go and we contribute and spend time within those areas to give back to the community. We think that's very important, that we're part of the fabric of the community. And as a neighbor, I look at it as I always become the de facto issue of problem solver within the neighborhood. Once people find out kind of that I've worked for a municipality, they always come down and they always ask about, hey, what about trash pickup? What about this pothole? What about the street lamp? So as a neighbor, always there to answer questions and help residents get the service that they need. So it's really important, I think from my vision and for our family to be really involved in the community. Not to just be, I work in Durango, then I come home and that's it. For us, it's really a part to be within the fabric of the community, participating in those youth activities, giving back to nonprofit organizations when we have the ability and the time to do it, and making sure that we make that a priority for our children so that they understand about it's also to serve, not so much to serve just as a job, but also to serve as our part of being residents within the community.
Thank you. The next question was provided by Eben Harrell. And the question is, imagine you discover something embarrassing to the city that would reflect poorly on Durango. You know how to fix the problem. If you go public with it, and the ensuing fallout might slow you down, what do you do? Do you steam ahead behind closed doors to fix the problem, or do you go public with the issue first?
The first part of the issue, if anything, that I would see and that I have seen that would be embarrassing is that I notify the city council immediately. I talk to them and I let them know what the situation is, whatever that embarrassing moment is about. I then begin to develop action points for the city council to consider. I always believe that it's a city manager's job to notify the council, but also provide them paths and solutions to correct the problem, and also as a public communication campaign in whatever that problem may be to get that information out. I am not a believer in anything that could possibly be embarrassing to try to hide or try to conceal it. You take those issues head on, but you bring it in with the city council and you talk with them. I mean, at the end of the day, the city council would be my bosses and my supervisors. So it's good to make sure that I reach out to them. I tell them, here's what we found. Here's how I would like to address it. Here are some of the things that we may need to do to get out in front of it with communication and letting the public know, and then work together with the city council to begin to correct the issue.
Thank you. Next, this question was submitted by Martin Poole. And the question is, what is your vision for sustainable and resilient management of our city?
Okay. So when I look at the management of the city, I think the most important part for me, and I think the most critical part, is really developing that strategic plan with the city council, developing what those goals are that the city council wants to achieve within the community, and really put in those performance indicators underneath them of where they are specific achievable goals that we can achieve. And the reason I look at that as sustainable management is because I think that's what really sets the plan of work for what the council and the city are doing every year when they approve their annual budget. Here's our work plan. It helps us continue to move forward with that plan, continue to move the organization forward, and to assist the community in the way that we know. I call it the contract with the citizens. From a management standpoint, I think it's a very important portion that every employee within the city of Durango has a curriculum of learning. Each one of them has a targeted leadership learning program that's assigned to them by their supervisors that helps them achieve whatever their career goals may be, whether it's to advance in the organization, whether it's just to be the best at their position that there are, but that we're continuing to educate internally within our workforce so that that's going to be sustainable, that our workforce continues to be one of the most highly developed and talented groups that we have, and continue to keep as much of that internal talent within our organization as possible. So I think those are the biggest parts that I see, is doing that strategic plan, that work plan that continues to go through. It's a living, breathing document, making sure that our employees are continued to be developed and get the training that they need to move forward, that we have succession plans established so that they're continuing to move forward, so that we never really have a leadership gap that comes through when people leave, that we're transferring that knowledge on. And that's, I think, how you really develop that leadership and stability in that management. And then finally, have clear processes and procedures for making sure that we're doing the right things, making sure that there's checks and balances on everyone, not just certain people, but everyone has a checks and balances, and that we're providing and always doing the right thing, and that we're always, we may make mistakes, but that we're going to own up to our mistakes, and we're going to set a culture of accountability. And if we make a mistake, we're going to come out and say that we made a mistake, and we're going to show how we're going to do it right, but that we're here, we're trustworthy, and we're dependable. And I think having that accountability portion ingrained into the organization is very important to contain that sustainable management.
Thank you. Next question is from a separate questionnaire provided by Matt Robinson. This is the first question on that questionnaire. What is your philosophy of assistant city manager positions?
My philosophy on assistant city manager positions is, I think that they're absolutely needed. When you look at the city government structure, that's just so many different things and so many different places of business. It's very difficult, I think, for one person to manage every portion of it, especially when you're looking at being out and accessible to the community. So I believe assistant city managers play an integral role into the organization in helping get the work done and provide sound advice and sound guidance for the city manager. And so when I look at assistant city managers, I think it's a really great fit within the organization. I think numbers and how many assistant city managers you have, that's a whole other discussion, but I think the position in regards to an assistant city manager is a very important one within the organization, and provides a big benefit to the city managers, to the community, and to the council. It does provide a good sounding board, and there's always times where you're going to have tough, difficult decisions and policy recommendations that staff needs to make, and it's always important to have some of those sounding boards to kind of bounce ideas about.
Thank you for that. The next question was submitted by Philip Revel, and it is, what specific steps would you take to ensure the city moves quickly to help mitigate climate change?
Moves quickly to help mitigate climate change. Environmental sustainability, I think, is really key. It's really important into defining and continue to create a sustainable environment. I think those specific steps really start off with, again, I'm gonna go back as that strategic plan with the city council, and where they see environmental climate control and environmental advocacy on their plans. Because I think when you look at any type of program, any type of things that you look at in undertaking within your organization, it requires a budget. And when you look at a city government, especially with COVID-19, there's a lot of different pulls and strains on the budget. And when you really look at things that we can do for climate change and help the environment continue to move forward and give back, if you will, that's going to take sometimes a concerted financial effort. So it's making sure that the city council has placed that as a priority on that strategic plan, so that we can work for it. Internally on the management side is really beginning to take a look at some of the practices that we're doing. Are we being environmentally efficient with some of the areas that we're doing, whether we're getting rid of how we're disposing of our solid waste at our fleet operations, how we're disposing of our oil, how are we disposing of our trash, are we recycling within the organization, are we making a push for that? When we look at vehicles for our fleet, are we looking at electric vehicles, are we looking at propane vehicles? But it's also important to make sure that we look at it not only for the climate change and the environmental portion of it, but also in the fiduciary responsibility of, does it make sense? Is the technology proven? Is it going to be cost effective? are these things that we're looking at. So I'm a big proponent of environmental sustainability, and it really takes a cause of making sure that as any type of proaction or any type of action that we're taking within the organization, we do have a vet and a checklist of, is this the most environmental friendly way that we're conducting our business, or that we're disposing of whatever waste it may be, and making sure that's accounted for and brought into it so that it's always our line of thinking. And I think when you have an organization where that's really placed into your thought process from every employee, you really start to see steps that are being changed, that cause that change to happen with the environment.
Thank you, Jose. The next question is the same general subject, a little bit different question. It was provided by Lisa Ray. Question is, provides a little history. In 2011, Climate and Energy Action Plan was shelved. In 2015, Sustainability Action Plan, SAP, went largely disregarded. In 2020, the 2020 update to the SAP is nowhere in sight, and the resolution number R2019 establishing community greenhouse gas emissions and renewable energy goals remains without an implementation plan nor funding. How would you meet the goals and objectives of these commitments by 2030 that are vital to preparing for climate disruption?
Well, I think the first part of it is really researching those plans and getting the history of why those plans were shelved, or what decisions were made for why those plans weren't updated, or why they haven't been continued to be worked on. I think in a lot of portions of these things it's for staff to take a look at and provide those recommendations. But at the end of the day, the political leaders, the city councils, are the ones who really make those final decisions in regards to if they believe that plan is something that needs to be approved, or if they believe that plan is something that needs to be followed. And from a city staff and a city management perspective, it's my job to be able to have those answers to those questions of why they weren't being followed, or why they were shelved. I think in a lot of times where you have plans that have that and people don't see movement, it's really because sometimes maybe the loop wasn't closed. I'm not exactly sure, again, what it is on this scenario, not knowing the familiarity with the plans, but there's always a communication loop that I'm always a big talker with when you come with the citizens. It's you do, if they ask you a question or you do a plan, you tell them about the plan, you tell them where the plan is, and then you tell them the final part of why that plan didn't get either implemented, improved, or why it was shelved. And there's that a really big key component of what I always call closing the gate. And I think there's that portion here, just for me looking at it coming in, that maybe that portion hadn't been communicated correctly to some of the interested citizens into those plans. And my job would be to take a look into it and be able to provide that communication to them. If I looked into it and here's why it wasn't, or here's why the council hadn't gone forward with that, or here's why the staff didn't go forward with it, but really beginning to ask those questions.
Thank you. Next question was submitted by Seth Fertney, and the question is, please detail your intended leadership role in city leadership for sustainability, including vision and experience in successful implementation of sustainability action plans. What would you do to improve the city's sustainability practice, and how would you encourage and assist citizens to upgrade their homes and businesses?
Okay. So sustainability, I'm going to go ahead and assume this is environmental sustainability.
I think that's accurate. Okay.
Just because when you look at sustainability, you have sustainability within the organization, and then you have sustainability within the environmental portions of it. As far as environmental sustainability, it was always a big thing that I had experience within the city of Irving, in really having an environmental office of sustainability and being a part of that plan. When I look at environmental sustainability, again, it's a very important portion to make sure that cities, we do have a big workforce, we do have a large workforce, and we do touch upon a lot of different areas within the community, that we're being as environmentally sustainable as possible with what we're utilizing. When you look at a plan, I think it really follows the same way as a strategic plan. It's developing one with the city council and talking with them in regards to, here's some of the things and the activities that we would like to receive. If there is not an environmental sustainability plan in place, if there is one in place, then obviously it's for us to sit down, talk about it with staff, see if there's any modifications or additions that need to be placed in order. But it all goes back to the real overarching strategic plan for the city, and making sure that if there is a sustainability plan, that it's incorporated within the city, and making sure that it's a goal of the city council. And I think when we look at a lot of the questions that we're receiving, a lot of these are policy directions. A lot of these are policy questions. And those issues would raise on the city council of directing that policy. If that's something that they see that they would want, then it's the job of the city council, the city manager, to administer that policy and come to a way where we could create that sustainability plan. So I want to make sure that I'm not stepping on too many toes on that side, but it would be looking at seeing what's the sustainability plan was always in place. If there isn't one in place, then looking to see if that's a goal that's been set up by the city council in an overall strategic plan of environmental sustainability plan. And I could see that absolutely fitting into the goals that the council has already assigned and putting that as a performance indicator and saying establish a sustainability plan, working with the city staff, the leadership, getting that people together and talking about what are the things that we've done and what are some of the things that we can continue to do, and then providing that back to the city council.
Thank you. Next question was provided by Richard White, and it's it's one of these submissions that has several questions in it, so I'll ask the first one. What is your approach to hiring and staff development?
Approach to staff development, I'm gonna start with that, is it's important, it's critical. Every staff member, kind of what I said, needs to have a staff development, a curriculum of learning for their plan. As a manager, one of the requirements that I've had with everybody who's worked for me is that they have those conversations with their employees. And if it's a manager of an employee, if you don't know what your employee wants to be, where their career aspirations are, then I personally think as a manager, that's a blind spot. That's a place that you need to really improve upon yourself. That it's incredibly important that everybody has a development portion, a development plan, outlines tailored directly for them to continue to develop and really begin to hone in some of the talents, some of the skills that they're seeking for their development. When I look at hiring, there's two things that you really look for. And I think the first one's qualifications, obviously, is the big one, is making sure that they're qualified for the job and they have the qualities that are necessary for being able to have the competency to provide the position. Secondly, what I would really look for is the values of the organization and the workforce. And through my communication with the city staff, I've seen that some of them do have values that I see placed on their email signature, and I'd like to make sure and work with the city staff to find out if those are really the foundation and they've been formalized as our values. Because when I look at an organization, it's really important to have values and really making sure that those values are incorporated within when you make that hire. Do they fit the organization's values? What are their aspirations on those values, and making sure it's a good fit, not only the competency, but the values that we hold dear within our organization, and can they make those work for them? And then lastly, the other part of it is really, I'm a big strategic plan guy. I know I've been saying it a lot, but that they really do believe in a strategic plan, that we don't make decisions based on gut reactions. We make decisions based on the data driven. We're pulling on a plan. Everybody's working together. We're pulling in the same direction. And that they're invested and interested in that type of work and type of movement moving forward.
Thank you for that. Next question was submitted by Cindy Ortman. Will you advocate for more electric car charging stations in various places? Will you improve on the August 2019 resolution establishing greenhouse gas emissions and renewable energy goals? Thanks and good luck.
That's a great question. And I think in a lot of that is kind of goes back to, what does the data tell us? I think that's a really big, important portion before making that decision. Kind of coming off and saying, oh, absolutely, I don't know. I mean, how many electric chargers, and some of the questions I would have before kind of going with electric charging stations, how many do we have? How many are being utilized? Do we have in our annual survey? And if we don't have an annual survey, obviously we're going to get one. I haven't seen one, but we're going to start doing that with our residents and our businesses. Is that something that they see as something that is a concern for them, and to make sure that we're needing we're lacking it? And so I think that's the biggest portion for me. Is I'm big about data and collecting data, collecting that feedback from the customer, from the businesses, the residents, the citizen, who I consider the customer, and seeing if that's a real need that's out there. So I think before answering that question, I have some due diligence to do in regards to find out where we're at today with those electric charging stations, and if that is something that we've seen from the community that's a need. And if it is, then by all means, then we can go back to the council, talk about it through our strategic plan, talk about it through our point of customer survey, that this is what we've heard from the public. Here's where our overwhelming comments are about needing more electric stations, and here's how the city staff thinks that we can propose this to the council to make it a reality.
Bob, this is Dean Berkey. I just want to note that we've got about 20 more minutes of questions, and so that's approximately 6 more questions for Jose. Jose, I just wanted to allow you to have a sip of water and catch your breath for one moment. But I do want to put the plug in for comments and invite the public to submit comments on both our candidates. The next candidate will follow this beginning at 6:30 till 8 o'clock this evening, similar format. And please submit your comments to durangogov.org/city manager. And we look forward to your comments. And with that, maybe 5 or 6 more questions. Bob?
Thank you, Mayor. Jose, this question was submitted by Anita Marbury. How would you handle serial meetings by city council when it comes to your attention that even after training, but when they come to your attention, even after training by the city attorney?
Serial meetings. I'm not sure I've actually heard that term. Is that, it may be called a different thing is that we're kind of meeting outside the open records or open meetings, kind of meeting at 1 or 2 and then another 2 meeting together? Okay. From a city manager perspective, that's absolutely something that if I see, it's something that I notify the council about, of making sure that they're being cautious and they're being careful. It's my duty to bring that up to the city council members of saying, hey, here's what I believe that may have happened, and bringing it to their notification and just reminding them that the Open Records Law and Open Meetings Act says that, we can't do that. And part of the portion that we've always looked at, and from my experience to try to stay ahead of it, is doing council candidate orientations. And I'm sure probably Durango does something very similar, to where council candidates who are looking at running for the city council, we put together part of just a welcome to Durango, kind of talk to them a little bit about the operations, but importantly, talk to them a little more importantly about the Open Records Act and some of the public information things that they subject themselves into, and just making sure that, they have that constant reminder that here's kind of some of the things you want to avoid, and it can easily happen. We're all humans, we make mistakes, but that we need to be cognizant and aware. And so if I see it, absolutely, I would bring it to their attention. I think you might be on mute.
On mute, Bob.
I'm usually failed to do that, to put it on mute. This time I failed to take it off. This question was provided by Werner Hyper. The question is, does climate change, in your opinion, provide a threat to the city of Durango? If yes, what would you do to finally meet the Sustainability Action Plan and renewable energy goals? And how would you secure the need for funding in these times of tight budget restraints?
Wow. So it's a pretty big question. I think what I would say, kind of right off of the bat, is I don't know if I could answer that about specifically on the climate change in Durango, because I haven't really looked at any of the analysis or the data that would talk about climate change within Durango. I've talked with residents who have talked a little bit about sometimes the snow seems to have been impacted in regards to snow. Sometimes there is snow, sometimes there isn't snow. I think that there's a part of an environmental sustainability portion, kind of goes back to it again, that I think we have a commitment from as the city to be as resourceful with our environmental resources that we have, in the ways that we're contributing to the environment, and in ways that we're unfortunately polluting in the environment, but trying to keep that to the bare minimum as we possibly can. If there is a push with regards to environmental sustainability, and where it needs any kind of funding going to the council, it really is having that discussion with them through the budget process of some of the things that maybe we could do that may provide a big benefit and a bigger buck to continue to have Durango continue to stay beautiful and be able to provide all the options in the seasons that are available. But it really is working with that council and making sure that all of these things are discussed as we're creating that strategic plan of what their goals and visions are for the account for the city, and making sure that environment, which has played a role into their goal, is to be able to add some of these things as work plan products to make sure that we're taking care of them during the year.
Thank you. Next question was submitted by Ryan Cox. Of particular significance to our community is Durango's natural setting and enthusiasm for outdoor recreation and activities. The city owns, manages, and collaborates with community partners to maintain an abundance of open space and trails. Please tell us how you've managed these types of amenities previously in your career, and what do they mean to you?
Yes, those amenities, recreational amenities, are just it's just an amazing portion. Really creates a community and makes it special. When I was an assistant city manager in the city of Cedar Park for, I think I was there 7 years and 6 years, was the assistant city manager. I got my start overseeing the Parks and Recreation department, and really got my start in the ability of understanding what these recreational opportunities are. While we did trails there, and we have a couple of community parks that I'm going to reference that I was able to contribute to. Both of them were 50 acres and connected a trail, crushed granite trail, between the city of Cedar Park into the city of Round Rock and through the city of Leander. So we really connected those activities and really spent some money on making sure that we had the connectivities, recreational trails. We did the first skate park. We did sports parks with fields. Also, while I was there, we built a recreational center that was $1 million under budget, which was a really big thing for us. We also did a third veteran memorial park that we concluded. It was about 54 acres as well, open space recreational area, and then also a Veterans Memorial Aquatic Center that we did as well. That was about, I think, 18 to 25,000. The numbers escaping me, a square footage of aquatic space. So I do have a big side of Parks and Recreation. It's kind of where I started when I was an assistant city manager, one of the first departments, a lot of construction portions. Did hike and bike master plans, did a park space master open plan. So I completely understand the importance of it. Is it really does create those communities and activities for your residents to do. And Cedar Park, one of the things that they were always known for were their great parks and their trails. And it really did bring a lot of new businesses, a lot of communities, a lot of citizens, a lot of residents into the community, and was a really important part. So I completely understand the recreational activities and the components, and really making sure that that open space and activities are there for residents. It's very important.
Mayor, how are we doing time-wise?
I think you're on mute.
You're on, Mayor? No.
You're on mute, Mayor.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. We have about 10 more minutes, and so
Thank you.
Perhaps 3 more questions.
Thank you. Next question. Was submitted by John Mahoney. What progressive ideas do you have to improve the quality of life for Durango citizens?
Improve the quality of life. The quality of life I look there seems pretty amazing to me. So it's a really high bar to continue to improve the quality of life. But I think when you look at improving the quality of life for the citizens of Durango, I'm not actually even, I'll call it a progressive idea because I think it is, but it really is opening up the communication with the residents, involving them with the significant changes that may be coming when it comes to projects that are being passed on, some things that might be controversial. Because I think when you look at quality of life, not only is it the businesses and the recreational opportunities that you're provided, but it's also things that might change your everyday feel. The building that gets built next to your house, the business that goes out of business, the park that gets built, or the whatever structure that gets built that really becomes somewhat of an eyesore to you. I think it's really that portion of the progressive idea is really beginning to establish a quality of life. And I say quality of life with communication. One of the things that I look for to it is that I've done, I think is pretty progressive, is a speakers bureau, and really beginning to start having a rotation of city staff, city department heads that go out to community events and are able to, on call and on demand, when a person asks for, we'd like to have a representative from the city, go and provide an update to the citizens, whether it's a neighborhood meeting, whether it's an organizational meeting, a service organization meeting, but really allowing the city to reach out and have that communication aspect to the residents. And then the last part is really continuing to protect the quality of life that there's there, making sure that those recreational opportunities are still available, that we're consistently, maintaining them and staying at a high course of the recreational activities, and continue to move forward.
Thank you. The next question was submitted by Richard White. It's the second question on the submission that we read the first question from earlier. How would you manage in circumstances where the city council has deep divisions?
Unfortunately or fortunately, whichever way you want to look at it, I've had councils that have had some deep divisions. And when you look at those deep divisions, it's really important for a city manager to listen for the commonalities. I think that's really, really important in making sure that when you're bringing information, when you're presenting, that you're really looking to find out what each one of them has in common and really try to find those avenues for the wins. And that really does that takes a lot of listening from a city manager. And it's not easy because sometimes those divisivenesses can be pretty divisive, and sometimes it can feelings can get hurt, and sometimes it can get personal. But I think as a city manager, it's our job to make sure that we're continuously showing things about, okay, here's where a win is. Here's what I'm hearing, one side saying, here's what I'm hearing the other side saying. Here's where I think we can have some movement to get us together. What do y'all think? I think staffs can play a big portion in making sure that when presentations are being presented, that it's being presented in a way that everyone has something that comes out to it, and it's a commonality where everyone's getting something that they see. They may not be getting everything completely that they want, but that there's parts of where when we establish it, that we're having communication with it, that we're not setting them up with any types of surprises, any types of things that we know might be hot button issues, without making sure that we're trying to find ways to make sure, again, that we're listening and that we're understanding where the different issues and devices are coming from. And I think when you look at that divisiveness, it really is on an issue, just they see it in two different ways and they see it in a different lens. And we have to make sure as a staff, and specifically me as a city manager, that I understand why that lens is different, and that I make sure that I'm helping them through the process, having regular communications with them. And it's not just me throwing an issue out there and saying, okay, you guys, duke it out, but it's me saying, okay, here's an issue that's coming up, and here's some of the ways that I think it can work for both sides. And if it's divisive in two sides or three sides, or it could work for everyone, but here's ways that I think this can work out, understanding kind of where each one of your viewpoints are coming from.
Thank you again. The next question is provided by Michael Wiley. The question is, the horrendous sound from illegally muffled and excessively loud motorcycles has caused us to minimize our visits to the main avenue and Durango and Durango in general for dining and shopping. Law enforcement is doing nothing about this plague. What will you do to support zero tolerance citing these motorcycles?
Well, that's an interesting one. We've had the same things in some of the communities that I've been through, and I think the first portion is really meeting with the police chief and guiding an understanding of what those decibel levels are. What are some of the things that are, what is a ticket and what is not a ticket? Because sometimes that can be that whatever the decibel meter is, or whatever the sounds of offensiveness is a place to be able to talk about that police enforcement. But I think another important part might actually be, instead of just going strictly to a police enforcement issue, is maybe looking at ways to communicate and partner with downtown area and some of the local businesses where the city can maybe place in some signs of, try not to rev your engine up all the way through, or finding ways to do some communication portions to reach out and help that side. Sometimes coming at and trying to work as a partnership of some of the issues that we have when you look at working with businesses, whether it's some little flyers, some signs, some communication that through Instagram that we can place out there that kind of talk about keeping it safe and not keeping it at a level to where everyone can enjoy. I think there's some different ways that we can reach out and do it without going through an enforcement end. But again, on the enforcement side, if there is an ordinance, if there is a law on the books that says that, here it is just making sure that the police department is working, and if they see it, that they are citing, and if they're not, finding out what the reason might be. And I think there's really a discussion that has to happen with the police department to find out what the situation is, if it is an accurate scenario, and what might be some of the challenges they're facing.
Thank you. Next question is provided by Isabel Schuler. It's one of these submissions that has two questions. I'll read the first. What level of influence in the decision-making process of existing and future infrastructure projects should the city manager have in decisions where public concerns are not addressed by city staff? What is the best policy to address such issues, and how does it affect a fair, equitable, and timely resolution of all for all involved?
Okay. So in a financial plan, I think the biggest ones that from the city manager's perspective is to set up that plan. And when I look at the financial practices that I've had, what we've done that I've found to be the most successful is doing a 10-year plan on the capital improvement portion, as well as the general fund budget, making sure that those in line, so that if we're building anything capital, that we have the ability on the financial side, on the maintenance and operations of whatever we built, to staff and be able to maintain. And so when I look at the city manager's perspective is really to take a look at having that analysis of what are the key infrastructure needs are, developing a criteria, whether it's age, whether it's maintenance cost on the improvements, whether it's the need to serve more residents because the capacity is reduced, and really provide that what I would call an objective analysis that's based on data that would determine which one of these projects would go in what year, present that to the city council with why the staff figured these projects would go this way, why we came that way, what were the analysis that we used, what were some of the key objectives and criteria that we used in determining it, presenting that to the city council, and allowing them for their final approval or comment if they have any adjustments or decisions that need to be made to it.
One more question, Mayor?
Possibly two. Yeah. Let's take another one and see if you got one in the wings.
All right. Next question. This was submitted by Kim Martin. It's one of these submissions that has several questions, so I'll read the first one. What do you know about the police department's stand on ICE raids in Durango? Do you support that position? Why or why not?
I actually do not know what the police department stand is on ICE raids in Durango. I've had a couple discussions from people who had talked a little bit about it, but I didn't really get a clear, concise, and I haven't had a chance to speak with the police chief on actually what is the police department stand on ICE raids. So I can't really answer that question in regards to ICE raids. But what I do know from my perspective, and what I find is always important, is to make sure that everyone is treated with respect and dignity. And that's what we always handle with everyone who's within our community, everyone who's within our citizens, everyone who comes to City Hall, is they're treated with the utmost respect and dignity as we would treat everyone else.
Thank you, Bob. It is 6:17. I think we have time for one more, if that's possible.
All right. The last question then was provided by Gail Harris, and it's one of these where I'll select the first of several that was submitted. Please describe what experience and training you have had in implementing sustainability plans for a municipality, particularly involving reducing greenhouse gas emissions and air pollution. If you've already answered that, I can go to the next question.
I think we already have answered that one.
Let me ask the second one. Please describe how you would work with all city departments to reach city's greenhouse gas emissions and renewable energy standards goals. I think you've already. Third, do you support reducing the city's greenhouse gas emissions and air pollution and increasing the city's reliance on renewable energy, such as are as important first steps in addressing climate change? What specific steps do you think the city should take to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions and increase the use of renewable energy?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think anytime we have a chance to use renewable energy, I think it's important. I think it's an important analysis that needs to be done to find out what are those renewable energy sources that we can use. Sometimes, in my experience, when we looking at renewable energy, one of the biggest hurdles that comes up to is just the financial cost. Just doesn't really pencil out to making financial sense to be able to use some of these renewable sources, whether it's an electric vehicle, sometimes the whether it's looking at an electric truck, sometimes that technology hasn't been quite proven. Sometimes the maintenance costs on electric cars haven't been proven for whichever areas it was, but in propane, natural gas, some of these other alternative areas on sustainability, I think it's important for the city to continue to take a look at them and analyze them and cost effective them out. If cost effective, if they are more expensive, then I think that's a conversation that we have with the city council and talk about a way that maybe placing a little bit more revenue, placing a little bit more funding into this could help offset some of these costs and maybe allow us to go into renewable energy. But when it comes to a fiscal decision, I think that's a decision that we can talk with the city council in regards to where they are. With Durango specifically, I think it's going to take me within that first 100 days to kind of take a look at where we are within our sustainable energy, where we are with some of the renewable energies that we're using, and are there some quick wins that maybe we can gather and some of the things that we can take a look at to help achieve some of those goals.
Thank you, Jose. It is 6:20, and that concludes our general public question and answer period. With that, we'd like to offer you a 2 to 3 minute recap. If there's anything that came up that you'd like to to expound on, or if you just have some final thoughts for folks here in Durango, we'd welcome that. And then after that, we'll take a 5-minute break before we start our next finalist. So Jose, take it away. Thank you.
Absolutely. First and foremost, thank y'all very much. When my family we visited Durango a couple weeks ago and met with the mayor and council, the staff, and even some of the residents, and got to really know the community. It was so very welcoming and warm. So for my family, for me, to y'all, thank you so very much. It's been an honor to be in this process. And I'm really looking forward to the ability to continue on and really become part of the community and help the city of Durango with some of the challenges that you're facing. Again, just really excited. I think I have the ability to do it with communication, some of the transparency issues that I've been able to accomplish within my career. I'm very excited about the possibility. I've kind of gone through my whole career really training myself for this time, having these 14 years of assistant city manager, deputy city manager, been an interim city manager experience, excuse me, handling all the different municipality functions and departments was really based on a goal of, if I ever became city manager, I would be prepared to be able to handle anything that gets thrown at me. And I think I'm in that position. I think I can do a lot of great things for the city of Durango. It's an honor to be here, and thank y'all very much. And I look forward to working with all of y'all very soon.
Excellent. Jose, thank you. Appreciate your time and just ability to participate with us this evening. And again, for those folks that wish to submit comments, we are soliciting comments at durangogov.org/city-manager, and we welcome your feedback. Jose, I really want to thank you once again, and with that, we will let you off the hook. And we're going to take a 5-minute break here. Nobody go away, because at promptly at 30, we will begin a similar process with our second finalist, Amber Blake, and we will continue till approximately 8 o'clock this evening. Welcome back. I'm Mayor Dean Berkey, and we would like to welcome you to our City Manager Finalist Public Engagement Session, Part 2. Hopefully you were with us for beginning at 5 o'clock for our first candidate, and now we have our second candidate. This is a Zoom version of what we would normally be in person, or would normally be an in-person meet and greet, allowing personal dialogue with each candidate. Due to COVID restrictions, we've tried to replicate that level of engagement via this method. The format for this evening will be a 5-minute introduction by the candidate, followed by a 30-minute question answer period for questions provided to our consultant by stakeholders within our community, and followed by another approximately 1 hour of questions from the general public that have been provided to our consultant, and those will be randomly pulled out of a hat to be posed to our candidate this evening. I would like to introduce Mr. Bob Slavin of Slavin Management, who is our search consultant and has been helping us through this process, and will be asking the questions this evening. So Bob, if you can introduce our next candidate, and we'll get started with the balance of our meeting this evening.
With pleasure, Mayor. Good evening again. Next candidate is April Blake, and she will I will allow her to introduce herself, because as I said earlier with the first candidate, she'll do a better job than I will. So,
ready? Okay.
It's all yours. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Slavin. Hello, everyone. My name is Amber Blake, and I am currently the interim city manager for the city of Durango. I'd like to start out by thanking the council and the community for attending, and I'd also like to thank the panelists for their time this evening and for the upcoming questions. I have been with the city of Durango for approximately 11 years in a number of capacities, and my heart is in Durango. I grew up here in Southwest Colorado and moved to Villanova University for my undergraduate degree in public political science. And then from there moved to Seattle, where I worked as a litigation assistant for Kingman and Peabody. and coached rowing. And then I moved to the University of Montana in Missoula for my graduate degree, where I received a Master's of Arts in Geography with an emphasis in community and environmental planning. Much of my background is in the public sector, and my technical expertise began in the transportation industry, working for a metropolitan planning organization. I am passionate about local government and communities, and having the ability to work with the community, the governing body, and the staff to make sure that our communities have an extraordinary quality of life and achieve the goals of the council. I'm excited to be here today, and I look forward to answering the questions. So I think we can begin.
Excellent. Bob?
Ready for me?
You bet.
First questions are from, as the mayor indicated, from stakeholders. And the first one was submitted by Tim Walsworth of the downtown Durango, the downtown Durango Business Improvement District. A question for you, Amber, is will you make a connection between the Animas River Trail to downtown a priority?
So the pedestrian and bicycle connection of the Animas River Trail to downtown Durango is a critical connection for transportation. Our multimodal master plan identifies the vision being that a 7th grade age child can get around Durango by themselves. And as a mother and community member, it is a critical connection for our community. Right now, we have the 15th Street crossing with the rapid flashing beacon, and that's a great interim improvement, but there's definitely additional improvements that need to be made, as well as the crossing at 12th Street, connecting the Animas River Trail there by River City Hall and Iris Park to downtown. So yes, I would see this as a priority, and I know that the Multimodal Advisory Board and the multimodal staff are currently working on this. We will need to look at the funding, and it does achieve council goals in moving forward with accessibility and the transportation item for city council.
Thank you. And the next question for you was provided by the Economic Development Alliance, Michael French. Question is, what do you believe are the top priorities for the city in economic development, and what do you think are the major obstacles to overcome?
So I'm writing these down, one moment, please. Top priorities for economic development and obstacles. That's a great question. In my mind, it is the city manager's responsibility to carry out the vision and goals of the city council. And economic development is one of the city council goals. I feel that a top priority, probably the highest priority, would be to establish a strategic plan. The community needs a strategic plan for economic development because it will provide a roadmap on how to achieve and improve more high-paying jobs, more jobs, as well as a diversified economy. I believe that this strategic plan would require partnership and collaboration between not only the Economic Alliance, Region 9, the Business Improvement District, the City of Durango, but local businesses as well. It may be required that we hire expertise from outside of Durango. There are a number of consulting firms that offer these types of services to assist in developing the strategic plan. However, this may be something that our Economic Alliance could do without hiring a consulting firm. So that would be where the partnership came in. And I believe that that would be the top priority. I think once the strategic plan is developed, it will identify additional priorities as well as the timeline for that. Diversification of our economy is critical. And thank you, Mitchell. In addition to that, I believe that we need to work with the county and Southwest COG on broadband. Bringing in remote workers and the ability to have remote working in the county is also a critical piece of the economic development for our region. In terms of obstacles, I touched on that slightly. We don't have a strategic plan at this point in time. And we also do not have, I think, the broadband and internet access and connectivity that is necessary to reach our full potential. Another obstacle is that Durango is unique. This provides additional opportunities for us, but big box retail is not going to solve all of our problems. Having additional remote workforce is not going to solve all of our problems. So we have an obstacle in being our location and the environment. And we also need to, thank you, Mitchell. We also need to overcome those. And I believe that strategic plan will assist us in that. Can I ask a question, please? Do we have a certain number of minutes or to answer the question?
30.
Okay.
Yeah, approximately.
That was not, I was unaware of that. So thank you very much. I wasn't sure why Mitchell was flashing up that camera or the.
Nothing you were doing wrong. It was just.
It's not meant to confuse you. It's just meant to assist you. Thanks.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank
About
you.
3 minutes, Amber. Yeah, thank you.
And thank you for that answer. The next question was provided by Rachel Brown, Visit Durango. COVID-19 has put Visit Durango and the Destination Management and Marketing Organization between a rock and a hard spot. Tourism is the largest contributor to Durango's economy, about 30%, and most businesses, especially hoteliers, rely on visitation to maintain revenues. However, residents fear that visitation could bring more cases of COVID-19. How would you recommend to DMMO, how would you recommend that they balance these priorities and address concerns raised by both groups?
So let me just double check that. Visit Durango. So we have tourism. How do we address the tourism, the fears of COVID for the
need for tourism versus the concern that the tourists will bring disease?
So this has been a significant issue and continues to be a concern with the current circumstances related to COVID-19. Visit Durango is definitely in a hard spot. However, I would like to say that Visit Durango has pivoted and adjusted fabulously to the current crisis that we're in with COVID-19. I believe that marketing to the tourists on our outdoor amenities is critical. We do know that social distancing and wearing face coverings helps prevent the spread of COVID-19. And the fact that our tourists can come here and play on the river, ride their mountain bikes, hike on our trails, spend time doing other things on the Animas River, experiencing the Animas River Trail and the downtown with our current configuration with outdoor seating and services, commerce on Main Avenue, is one way that we can look at that. So marketing how to safely experience Durango is one of the great things that Visit Durango can do. And I think that's critical for a destination marketing organization. Related to tourism, they're extremely, the lodger's tax is what funds the majority of their budget. So with the decreasing revenues, that creates a critical issue with funding for them. So I believe partnering with the city and the county for how to market Durango and continue to bring in the tourists, to continue to bring in our visitors and support the service industry and the tourism industry is critical. And I believe our partnership and a collaborative approach to keeping Durango safe, working with San Juan Basin Public Health, the local businesses, as well as our hospitals and the policy group that currently meets for our region or the health district, and really bringing in that recovery group as well. The current recovery task force that I know Rachel sits on, and so does Tim and Mike French, as well as a plethora of other individuals and business leaders in our community. But working with that recovery task force will also be critical, because as we approach whatever COVID has in store for us next, we need to be able to respond appropriately so that we can continue to ensure that our economy and our tourist economy remains viable and thriving.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question is also provided by Tim Walsworth with the Durango Business Improvement District. And it is, what is your vision for the North Main District?
Again, I believe that the vision of our community is set forth by the city council, who listen to their constituents. So the community sets the vision, the council sets the goals, and the manager carries out those goals to achieving that vision with our staff and with the community and our local partners. My vision for North Main Avenue and the North Main District falls very in line exactly with what the council has stated in their goals, as well as what's in the North Main plan, the character district plan. The urban renewal district will help incentivize and allow us to see the redevelopment of that corridor. But my vision for the corridor is a more pedestrian oriented corridor where the land use and transportation connection is in sync. It is critical that we understand that transportation and land use go hand in hand. In order to have the redevelopment of that corridor, we may need to look at parking requirements as one example. And should we be able to provide the appropriate transit service, let's say 15-minute headways, then individuals living within that corridor would not necessarily need a car versus other locations within our community where you could have a vehicle and it would be necessary for you to get to school, get to work, buy food, etc. So the vision for the corridor would be redeveloped as mixed use in line with the character district plan, with a high level of transportation, public transit, as well as that pedestrian oriented feel so that we have a thriving, more downtown feel for the North Main corridor. It's also going to be critical as that happens to work with the neighborhoods. The neighborhoods directly adjacent to the North Main corridor will be impacted directly by whatever redevelopment occurs in that corridor. And so working in partnership with the neighbors to mitigate any potentially negative impacts or changes in how their neighborhood functions today will be something that we really need to focus on to ensure that we maintain the quality of life for the neighbors that are currently living in those neighborhoods adjacent to the North Main corridor, but also ensure that the businesses can go in and the redevelopment can occur and we provide the access to all people of all abilities. So the other piece of that with that pedestrian oriented and transit oriented type development would be looking at ADA improvements throughout the corridor and access across the corridor. We do have schools. There's Mountain Middle School in that corridor as well. And there are children that come from the Riverview neighborhood and the other side of the Animas River and the other side of North Main Avenue. So we really need to focus on looking at those connections, but the redevelopment.
Bob, you're on mute.
Thank you. The next question is a second question from Visit Durango, Rachel Brown. Many stakeholders in the community hope to increase city lodgers taxes in 2021. The stakeholders of this increase include the lodgers, Visit Durango, the Durango Creative District, and the Convention Center Steering Committee. Additionally, City Council has discussed using tax revenue for transportation and affordable housing. How would you balance the priorities of these various groups and reach a consensus between these stakeholders?
This is a fantastic question. And again, I'm going to go back to the fact that City Council sets the policy and will be the final say on should a ballot measure be passed. But I believe my role could be working with the stakeholders. So working with the lodgers, Visit Durango, the Creative District, and the Steering Committee for an Art Center. In working with those groups, all of those groups, the lodgers, Visit Durango, Creative District, and the arts, are critical components of a thriving community. So in working with the Steering Committee, one of the options that I would potentially suggest to City Council is looking at the current lodgers tax that currently exists to see if potentially that tax would be used to focus on transportation. There's approximately $1 million a year at this point in time from that lodgers tax. And so that could be one way of looking at that. In addition, I think coming to a conclusion where, like I said before in my previous answer to Tim's question about the vision for North Main, transportation is a critical component. So if the council and the community decided that they were amenable to adding an additional sales tax specifically for transportation or housing or economic development, items that encourage future growth and help achieve city council goals, there's always a way to come to consensus and agreement on how to move forward. The other thing that we would need to know in order to have these conversations is what's necessary from the lodger's tax for each of these groups in order to achieve their mission. And we need to ensure that in those conversations, the stakeholder groups clearly understand council's vision and council's goals. And I think having a strategic plan for city council, in addition to the goals, will help assist with that process. Because when we can identify how much additional money is needed for transportation or housing or economic development, then it will be able to clearly express to the stakeholder groups that are interested in a lodger's tax increase on why that funding source is identified as potential lodger's tax and how that can also benefit the causes of each of the interested parties.
Thank you. Next question is a second question from Michael French with the Economic Development Alliance. What is your vision for economic development in our community long-term? And are there any changes that you would make to lead staff and work with the council towards that horizon?
Can you please repeat the end of that? Changes
Yeah,
is where I lost you.
I'll read, and what is your vision for economic development in the community long-term? And are there any changes you would make to lead staff and work with the council towards that horizon? Yes,
that's a great question. So in it, and I'll say in the long term would be potentially a 10-year vision. We could do a 30-year vision, but I know that that's hard to grasp a hold of 30 years from now. So within the next 10 years, my vision for economic development with the city of Durango is maintaining and enhancing the critical partnership with the economic. And I believe that there are changes that need to be defined in that strategic plan. I believe that, as I mentioned in the previous response related to economic development, that a strategic plan would identify the best course of action for the city of Durango and the community. And I mean this in a way that it may not be in the best interest of the community and in the city for us to change our staffing levels in terms of economic development. However, it may be, and a strategic plan could identify where we have gaps and where we have opportunities so that we can most efficiently spend taxpayer dollars and put our resources towards achieving the strategic plan. In terms of the vision that I would see for Durango within the next 10 years of economic development, we would focus on a multifaceted approach. We can't just look at exactly what in my mind, the high paying jobs or the additional jobs. When you look at transportation, housing, and economic development, I'll use those three, they overlap. So if you imagine a Venn diagram, and I'm going to put transportation in this example at the center, you cannot get to work without a transportation system. So if you have and you don't have a way to get to work, the transportation system is taken away, then that will have significant impacts on you as an individual, on the community, on your employer. And so by focusing on our economic development goals of having a diversified economy, remote workforces, additional companies that could be coming to Durango, I think that strategic plan is critical. The other thing that would be a first step towards that would be potentially a white glove concierge, which would be the La Plata Economic Alliance, potentially having this concierge service where you walk through and recruit and market Durango to say, here's how you come here. These are the unique pieces of our community, and here's how we can be a great fit for you. And build off of that white glove type service for recruiting and marketing Durango to interested parties in coming to this location. The other piece of the economic development that I see is housing. And we can get into that because I see I'm out of time, but we need to make sure as the workforce comes here, we have affordable and attainable housing so that all of those employees that will be working to improve our economy have a place to live.
And
Thank you.
Thank you, Amber. I'm going to say we have sometimes a bad connection, slightly warbly, but if there's anything you can do to correct that, that's great. We heard there's just a couple instances there, and don't. Our timer is just there for your reference. We're trying to keep things moving and get as many. Our goal is to get as many questions from the public as possible, not to cut you off. So,
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Mayor, do you think it's time to bring the other three or two or three?
Yeah,
Stakeholders in?
I might ask, we've asked for questions to be submitted to our consultant, but we know that there's a few folks out there, the stakeholders that we've invited, specifically the Fort Lewis College. I don't know if President Strudicus is with us this evening, if you'd like to pose a question, or Durango Fire Protection. Chief Dowdy was with us previously, and Chamber of Commerce, if Jack's out there. Please raise your hand and we'll allow you to ask a question. Also, San Juan Basin Health, Leanne Jalon. If you're available, we'd enjoy a question from you as a stakeholder in our community. So Mitchell, please let us know if any of those folks are available. In the meantime, we can ask another question.
Chief Dowdy did raise his hand first, followed by Leanne, so I'm going to let Hal speak.
Excellent. Thanks for being here, folks.
Hey, Amber, it's Hal Dowdy with Durango Fire Protection District. Just wondering, I had asked earlier the question about the downtown fire station. And so I'm going to modify my question just a bit with your experience and knowledge of that. Knowing for sure that priorities within the city's infrastructure plan are a new police station, which we absolutely support and want to see happen. How do we balance a contract situation like Durango Fire Protection District with the needs of the city government direct in supporting infrastructure support and growth in the way of facilities?
That's a great question, Chief Dowdy, and good evening. Thank you for coming. So the question is, how do we balance the priorities of a police station, fire station, and fire contract, and then our additional facility needs?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So the city of Durango, as you know, is currently under contract with the Durango Fire Protection District. We are contracted with you to provide those services. And as a result, we pay through the general fund contract to the fire department. This is a large sum of money, approximately $5 million a year. And we do have needs for a police station. In the city's current budget and the way that we're structured with the contract with the fire district, those monies come off the top and we pay that contract. One of the options that we potentially could have would be to become part of the district. So this would have to go to a vote of the people to see if they wanted to, if our community wanted to join the fire district. This would do a number of things. One, the city of Durango would have a seat on your board, as you know. And the taxes that our community pay in terms of property tax would then be paid to the fire district. Should the city move in that direction, essentially all of the property tax that the city currently collects would go to the fire district. And then the general fund monies would potentially be available for a police station and other facilities. Now, this would also decrease the amount of property tax revenue that comes into the general fund budget, which is a little over $1 million, like approximately $1.2 million. So this could be something that we would look at. In addition to that, the other item that we could look at is, if council were interested and the community were interested, taking I believe it's approximately 2.5 mils that are the current property tax that go to the city, and that would be a potential property tax increase, which I know is not favorable, but that would provide additional funding within the general fund for the facilities of, in addition to the police station and other city facility maintenance or facility needs that the city has. So at this point in time, with the contract to the fire district, I think that we'll need to look internally within the budget. If it is a council priority for a fire station, or a police station that we move forward with, then we will need to look at how we are allocating those general fund dollars, because that's where the funding would need to come from. The downtown fire station, we're excited to see you move forward with it. And I know we have a lot of work to do to identify the right location that meets the community needs, that meets your needs, and that we can work in partnership on, because fire, as you know, is a critical service that keeps us safe and helps all of us sleep at night.
Thanks a lot, Amber.
Thank you.
I noted that Monique DiGiorgio is trying to get in as well, but you said you had Leanne in queue as well from San Juan Basin Health Department.
Yep, I'll allow Leanne to speak.
Hi, this is Leanne Jalan from San Juan Basin Public Health, a local public health agency. And my question for Amber is, what do you see as health needs in the community that municipal government can help address? And what would you need from your local public health agency to be successful in that?
That is a great question. Let me just write down a couple of notes here. Well, thank you, Leanne. I'm going to repeat the question back to make sure that I heard it correctly. What health needs do I believe local government can address? And what do we need from our public health department in addressing those?
Yes.
Great, thank you. That is a great question. And I think we are in a unique circumstance. If you would have asked me this question 10 months ago, I potentially have a different answer. In our current circumstances with COVID-19, I believe municipalities to play a critical role in addressing the public health crisis. And our role in that is heavily reliant on our partnership with the San Juan Basin Health, because public health crises are the purview of public health, not a municipality. So in terms of COVID-19, I believe that the municipality, in working with our local public health department, can put out guidance, can provide a framework, and can support the public health department in ensuring that our community has all the resources that it needs through partnerships. The partnerships that we currently have in place are phenomenal. And I believe that we have done a fantastic job in working with the health department, the county, the other regional municipalities, Archuleta County, as well as the enforcement team and the hospitals, all of our healthcare facilities and providers, to address the constantly changing, ever-growing issue of COVID-19. Now, that being said, I believe that there are a number of health needs within our community. One of those specifically is mental health. And I believe that the city can partner with Access Health, San Juan Basin Public Health, to provide information and connectivity for our residents to the health services that they need to maintain a high quality of life and a high quality of mental health. In addition, I believe that additional health needs that we have for the health department, again, are restaurant oversight and critical issues related to schools and maintaining and ensuring safety public health safety within our schools, on our transit system, and the FOG program that we have going, which is fats, oils, and grease, for all of you out there that don't have the same acronym dictionary that I currently have. So the fats, oil, and grease program is, I think, a critical issue. And that also ties into the fire district as well, because when we have a kitchen fire, because the grease traps haven't been cleaned or are not in great repair or are meeting standards, that is something where could be significant issues for health and safety. So really looking at that health and safety piece. And, but at this point, I think our focus needs to be on COVID-19 and public health. I could go on and on about obesity, et cetera, but I'm going to end there.
Mitchell, do we have another question from stakeholders?
I do see Monique raising her hand. I'm going to allow her to speak right now.
Excellent.
Hi, Amber. This is Monique with Local First. Thanks so much for answering one of my questions. I had two questions from Local First and one related to climate change, but I think that the folks in the community are going to ask you quite a bit about that. So I'll just focus my question on asking you the role that you see the city manager playing to support the local independent business community, and specifically the triple bottom line accounting system, which is people, planet, and prosperity for everyone. Thanks, Amber.
Thank you very much, Monique. People, planet, and prosperity
for everyone.
That's a great question. So I see my role as city manager to be a key stakeholder with the community and with Local First and with our local businesses. I do not feel that it is the role of the city manager to take the lead on that. It's not something that the city would take over, so to speak. I believe that Local First is the keystone in the partnerships and working with the local businesses. Local businesses are the engine that keep our town running. And so my role would be to meet and support our local business owners in any way that the city can provide support. I think one example of how we have done this recently was with the emergency order that allowed for deferral of sales tax remission during the COVID-19 crisis. With the reduction in our economy, with shutting down for stay-at-home order, that had a huge impact. And one of the ways as city manager we were able to help was asking the local businesses, working with the chamber, saying, what can we do to help? And then putting into place those actions that provide the support. So that's one example. Another example during this current health crisis was working with the businesses, specifically downtown, the local businesses downtown, to say, what do we need to do? Or businesses on North Main. And there was a request for relaxing parking requirements so that we could use parking, small businesses, local businesses could use parking spaces for outdoor commerce to allow for additional space to run their businesses in a safe fashion moving through COVID-19. In terms of the triple bottom line, people come first. That is 100%. And we do need to look at the impacts of all the things that we do, our transportation system, the use of our resources, what we're purchasing, the energy that we're using, to make sure that we are using our resources in the most effective and climate-friendly way possible. And I believe that our sustainability action plan, which is for internal municipal services, but working with stakeholder groups in the sustainability working group to make sure that the city is doing what it can to provide support, to be a key partner and critical stakeholder to support our local businesses. And then prosperity for everyone. This is really what we're all striving for. Because if everyone in our community is prosperous, then we are supporting each other, and really it's playing to the lowest common denominator to make sure that we are working our community to support everyone. And if we're supporting and ensuring that the lowest common denominator is supported and is prosperous, then anyone that's in our community will be supported and we will achieve prosperity together.
Thank you, Amber and Bob. We've reached the end of our stakeholder portion of, unless there's, I might ask Mitchell if we've got any stakeholders still in the wings.
I do see Jack Llewellyn raising his hand. I don't know how you feel about Jack asking Amber a question if he didn't get to ask Jose a question.
I think it'd be appropriate, and we'd welcome the stakeholders. Definitely, if we can ask, and I appreciate that.
Jack, I have allowed you to speak.
Thank you, and thank you, Amber, for the opportunity. Jack Lowen with the Durango Chamber of Commerce. So my question is, how would you identify areas and direct growth for business expansion and retention, specifically the Poster Road area, and is the city prepared to annex that into the city?
Okay. How would can you repeat your question, please, Jack?
Yeah. How would you identify areas to direct growth for business expansion and retention, and specifically the La Posta Road area? And you feel that the city would want to annex that into the city limits?
Great. That's a very good question. Thank you, Jack. I would like to go back to the idea of the strategic plan for economic development. And then I also go back to the city's land use development code. And as you know, and hopefully our community members know, the city has a land use development code, and codes can be changed, they can be reviewed, and they are constantly evolving documents that guide the growth of the city of Durango in our case. And currently this La Posta Road is identified as in the joint planning area, and at some point is planned to be brought into or annexed into the city. And that is a key area for future business development and growth. I believe that our partnerships need to continue with the development. We need to improve those partnerships and really look at how the city can be a player in moving forward the development process. Because when a development occurs, if it's happening in the correct way that meets the council's goals, the community's vision, and that land use development code, then we're moving forward per the vision of the community and achieving council's goals at that same time. In terms of identifying additional areas outside of that, I believe in working with the city staff, the community members, and future developers. Because if we have a developer that comes in and says, I saw this and this, I want to put a certain business in, and this is the type of business, we may be looking at a potential land use change for a certain piece of property. But our development process, we will need to look at how that is used. And if there are areas that are identified as challenges for developers, then as city manager, I believe that it would be my job to work with our community development staff and see if there were ways for us to improve and streamline that process to help our developers and interested business owners move forward in coming to Durango, which helps our economy and it helps our community. In terms of other areas for growth, I believe we have a number of areas that we can look at. We have the Three Springs area. We have potential future growth up by the interchange that CDOT is doing. There could be potential development and business growth up in that area. And then we do have La Posta Road as well. And as we look into that, I think working with community members, property owners, as well as the strategic planning process for economic development will help us identify the best way to move forward.
Thank you, Amber, and thank you, Jack, and thank you for all the stakeholders, our community stakeholders who have provided questions to our consultant to be posed to our candidates this evening. With that, we'll move on to the general public questions, which will be randomly picked from a hat, if you will, by our consultant, Bob Slavin. Thank you. Take it away, Bob.
Thank you, Mayor.
And these will be approximately 3-minute responses as well, approximately, and that'll take us to about 7:50 in the evening, and then we'll have a wrap up, offer our candidate 2 to 3 minutes to wrap up and have concluding comments, and that'll be our evening. So thank you so much.
These questions are not necessarily the same ones that were asked earlier. They're being picked randomly from the same group of questions, but they may be a little different. The first one is from Michael Brennan. And the question is, what are the obligations of an effective city manager to her city council, and how would you fulfill those in your tenure in Durango?
That is a great question, Mr. Brennan. So how can a city manager effectively meet the obligations? The obligations of a city manager are laid out in the city charter. Our city charter can be found online. And the primary obligations of the manager include providing a balanced budget to the council and carrying out council's direction in terms of their goals and vision. So currently the city council has goals and vision. Their goals set up that provide a vision for the community. And one of the effective ways that I would suggest moving forward, should I be chosen as city manager, will be to work with the city council after their goal setting process at their retreat, which will take place on August 28th, with developing a strategic plan. So the goals define the vision. However, at this point in time, there's no strategic plan for the city in terms of a roadmap in achieving those goals. So that, I would say, is one of the obligations of a city manager, and that's how I would effectively achieve that piece. In terms of the budgetary requirements of the city manager, first and foremost, hiring a new finance director. We're currently in the process in hiring a new finance director, and we will be holding interviews, the second round of interviews in the next couple of weeks. The intent is to have that new finance director on board with the city prior to the council's budget retreat. In working with city staff, in development of the budget to achieve city council's goals, it will be required to look at each fund and the revenues that are projected and ensure that the budget is accurate, it meets the goals of the council, and it meets the goals of the community. We have basic services that we're required to provide: water, sewer, trash. If you woke up in the morning and your water didn't run, I would not be doing my job. So ensuring that service delivery to the communities, especially those core services, water, sewer, trash, public transit, we need to make sure that we're moving forward with those. And then it is the responsibility of the manager to uphold our form of government, which is a home rule municipality with a council manager form of government, and ensure that we're staying true to the charter.
Thank you. Next question is from Bob Wolf. You may have partially answered this. What would you support a new city regulation? Would you support a new city regulation saying something to the effect of the city employees shall enforce the LUDC regulations equally among property owners, land use development code?
Absolutely. The land use development code is put into place for a reason, and it's to provide standardization. And I would fully support ensuring that folks are treated fairly and equitably. However, I would say that there are variance processes that are vetted through our planning commission and then go to the city council in terms of any quasi-judicial hearings when, for any development process. But I do believe that it's important for us to look to the land use development code and make sure that we are treating everyone in the same fashion.
Thank you. Next question is from Ryan Huggins. The question is, how would you, as city manager, support staff and implement policy if city staff's expertise and recommendations run counter to a general, less informed public sentiment or desire?
Can you please repeat the question?
Yes. How would you, as city manager, support staff and implement policy if the city staff's expertise and recommendations run counter to a general and less informed public sentiment or desire?
So the city manager does not create policy. The council is the policy making body. However, the city manager can implement policy for internal operations. So as city manager, it's my responsibility to work with the staff and support them, making sure that our staff is making the best recommendations to the council. And the staff that the city of Durango has an extraordinary amount of technical expertise. And it is also the responsibility of staff to provide information to the council that allows them to make the best decision. So staff will provide a recommendation, and council still has the authority to go against the staff recommendation. However, it is my responsibility to ensure that the staff is supported in showing the recommendation. And then it's my responsibility to advise council. The manager's role is an advisor to council, to advise council if I feel that by not taking staff's recommendations, they would be getting themselves into trouble or not making the best decision for our community. If in fact any policy decision was being made that was not that was against any guidelines or regulations, would definitely be working with the city attorney to ensure that we have informed the council on the risks of and potential liability or risks of making a decision that goes against what we need to be doing as an organization and for our community.
Thank you, Amber. Next question was submitted by Matt Robinson. The question is, what was the best question the hiring consultant asked you? What didn't he ask you that he should have? And what should council ask but didn't? What is your best management skill and the one that you need to work and the one that you need to work on the most? Question again. What is the best question that your hiring consultant asked you? What didn't he ask you that he should have? What should council ask but didn't? And what is your best management skill and the one that you need to work on the most?
Okay. So in this situation, thank you, Mr. Robinson, for your question. The best question that the consultant asked is a challenging one, because in this case, the consultant, I did not receive questions specifically in an interview process from the consultant, because I'm not going to say the best question from this evening that Bob has provided in my perspective, because they were from other people. So I will move forward in terms of the supplemental questionnaire that was developed in partnership with the city council. So there were great questions. And as you know, I'm sure you've reviewed the responses and questions on the city's website. Those were phenomenal questions. They were asking the right questions to identify the right candidates for the city manager position for the city of Durango. I have not had my one-on-one interviews with all of the city councilors to date. But of the questions so far, many of the questions were similar to what we had this evening. But the number one question I believe that was asked was, why did you apply for this position? And potentially the question that was not asked was, and then the follow-up question from that was, what will you do if you're not selected for the position? And then at this point in time, I don't have a question that council should have asked that they haven't, because I don't want to make the assumption that they're not going to ask a question in the next few interviews that I have with them. In terms of my best management skill, I believe it's interpersonal communication and teamwork. So in terms of communicating, I find that it is absolutely critical to be clear in your communication and then follow up and circle back and ensure that what you said was what was heard by the person that you were speaking with. And that goes with council, with staff, with the community. So really that partnership, we are a community and not one person can get the job done. It takes all of the staff, it takes the council, it takes every single resident in this town to help get us to where we want to be 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now. And my management skill to work on most is going to be patience. So understanding you can't get everything done in a day. I do have a tendency to work too many hours in a week, and I don't want to burn out. And I have received feedback from peers and colleagues that it's critical to ensure that maintaining balance and knowing that the work will always be there. And it's probably not healthy to maintain 70-hour weeks. So I'm working on that one.
Thank you, Amber. Next question was submitted by Dan Burkhart. City of Durango organizational chart applied in 2017 is seemingly much more complex than many municipalities of similar size. As the city manager, would you consider an analysis of the city's organization for efficiency and effectiveness?
Mr. Burkhart, that is a phenomenal question, and my answer is absolutely. I believe strongly that it is critical to review an organization's organizational chart on a frequent basis. I would say approximately every 3 to 5 years, at least. And I would definitely undergo an evaluation of the city's organizational chart. And I believe that it's critical in looking at the organizational chart and ensuring that however we choose to move forward with a new structure or an altered structure, that it meets the needs of the organization as well as the community. It needs to meet city council's goals, because as we have a strategic plan in executing council's goals and the vision of those for the community, we need to make sure that we are staffed in the appropriate ways, that the resources are allocated appropriately to ensure that we're moving forward council's goals. So the short answer is absolutely yes.
Thank you. Next question was submitted by Kathy Turner. Question is, the coronavirus has caused the partial shutdown of our economy and decreased city tax reserve revenues. Yet the Parks and Recreation Department has abundance of money and still wants to spend that money on expensive and maybe unneeded items like the 32nd Street pedestrian overpass. As city manager, would you favor using this money for more important and critical needs?
Ms. Turner, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. You are correct. COVID-19 has had a significant impact on our sales tax revenues. At this point in time, last month we were down 7%, and we're approximately 11% for the year. And looking at a potential surge once we head into the fall, it could have additional significant impacts. So worsening with the sales tax moving into the end of the year. So what the city has done, the council reduced and deferred a number of projects, millions of dollars of projects in April. And those projects continue to be in the deferment. Each of those projects, I want to make sure that the community understands that every single one of those projects that were deferred, the funding went back to the appropriate funds where the money had come from and sits in the fund balance there. And each of those projects will need to be requested to council and reappropriated by council before they can be moved forward, which does provide an opportunity to ensure that the priorities are aligned with council goals and council is appropriating money for the community priorities. The Parks and Recreation Department has 2 dedicated sales taxes that are eligible for their uses, the 2015 half cent and the 2005 quarter cent. Of those 2 revenue sources, there is a lot of money there on approximately in an average year. So we'll go off of last year, a couple years ago, there was approximately $4.4 million generated in revenue from that half cent and $2.2 million generated from the quarter cent. And as city manager, I definitely appreciate the processes that we have in place, the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, the Natural Lands Preservation Advisory Board, and the Multimodal Advisory Board all make recommendations to City Council on how to spend those funds and what projects to be funded with those funds. Recently, I made a request to City Council for direction in budget preparation to allow for the 2015 half cent funds, 2019 half cent funds, which is for streets, and 2005 quarter cent funds to be able to be used in the operational budget. The 2019 half-cent funds, approximately $1.7 million was currently expended to be used for streets maintenance projects in the operating budget. So that's like potholing, crack sealing, and general street maintenance. And then with the 2015 money, I made the request that if it were to be appropriate to use the 2015 funds moving forward in the 2021 budget for operating, in the operating budget for maintenance of parks. As we look forward into the future, the 32nd Street Bridge, should it come back to council, it will be a council decision. However, at this point in time, I will say that I believe the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, the Multimodal Advisory Board, and the Natural Lands Advisory Board have identified priorities, and they will be provided to City Council for what the primary key projects are in a prioritized fashion that they would like to see funded with those funds. And I believe that it is important that all of those tax dollars are used for the priority projects that move our community forward. They provide connectivity, they provide accessibility, and they provide well-maintained improvements that ensure our high quality of life and ability for us to maintain our mental health during this COVID health crisis, where we can get outside, be with our friends and family at a safe distance, and ensure that our seniors, our disabled population, our kids, every single one of us can get outside and get that fresh air and continue to live our lives despite the public health crisis.
Thank you, Amber. And Bob, if I might just interject, it's about 7:30, which leaves about 20 more minutes for questions from the public. And that's I anticipate that to be approximately 6 more questions to wrap up our evening. With that, I do want to give Amber just a second to have a sip of water and announce our method of engagement. That folks listening in, we do appreciate your comments, and the City Council is requesting members of our community provide feedback on each finalist. All feedback will be considered. However, it will be ultimately City Council's decision to appoint the permanent city manager. Please visit durangogov.org/city manager. Again, that's durangogov.org/city manager to find a link to submit your feedback. Because this is a public process, your name and address are required to submit feedback, and all related correspondence may be subject to public disclosure. The deadline to provide feedback about the finalists is Thursday, August 20th at 4:30 p.m. At that point, it'll be collated by our consultant and provided to council in some concise manner. So we're looking forward to that. And with that, I think Amber's ready for the next question.
Thank
Ready,
you.
Amber?
I am.
Good. Next question was provided by Anita Mulberry. How would you handle serial meetings by the City Council when it comes to your attention, even after training by the City Attorney?
Thank you, Ms. Marbury, for your question. Serial meetings are they're very important. Our form of government is set up to ensure that the public has a transparent process and can see the decision-making process of the council. In an instance where, let's say, hypothetically, there were a serial meeting and council had been trained on how to avoid serial meetings, I would bring it to the attention of the city attorney. And I think that it would be important to bring it to his attention, and then I would bring it to the attention of the council. If I were to witness a serial meeting or hear of it, just to provide them a heads up that there was a concern and there's been a question about a serial meeting, and then provide additional training or resources if that was necessary. And again, would ensure that the city attorney, both the city manager and city attorney, report to the city council. But the legal pieces, which a serial meeting is part of the rules of governance, falls under the city attorney. So I feel that it would be important that both of us were speaking with council, and then I would defer to him.
Thank you. Next question was provided by Werner Heiber. Does climate change, in your opinion, provide a threat to the city of Durango? If yes, what would you do to finally meet the Sustainability Action Plan and renewable energy goals? And how would you secure the needed funding during these times of budget restraints?
All right. Okay, so if yes, how would I help ensure that we meet the Sustainability Action Plan goals? And how do we secure the needed funding? So yes, Mr. Hyber, thank you for your question. I do believe that climate change, that's how you phrased the question, am I correct?
I believe that's correct.
Okay. Climate change does pose a threat to the city of Durango, and much well beyond the city of Durango, to our state, to our nation, to the planet. And as city manager, I believe it would be my role to focus on the Sustainability Action Plan with staff, working with staff to identify to move forward the Sustainability Action Plan. I also feel that it's important to work with the Sustainability Working Group. There is a great pool of knowledge in our community, and we have many partner agencies and nonprofits that work on climate change in our community. So the Sustainability Action Plan, as you know, and I mentioned earlier, does focus on municipal operations. However, that's what we have purview of, is how we operate as a city. So looking at efficiencies that we can implement within buildings, with our fleet, with maintenance, and in terms of staffing and how we use any resource. So if you haven't checked out the Sustainability Action Plan, I encourage our community members out there listening to check it out. But focusing on that within the city's strategic plan, as well as the work plan for the sustainability coordinator. Imogen is critical to moving that forward and working with departments to achieve those goals. In terms of the needed funding, supporting staff in seeking additional funding, grant funding, partnering with local partners, regional partners, statewide partners, and beyond. And in addition to that, one of the things that we, as an organization that Imogen, our sustainability coordinator, has been point on is working on the energy performance contracting, looking at city facilities and how to improve the facilities to increase energy efficiency, and create more sustainable facilities within our organization. In terms of fleet and transportation, I can say that our police force recently had a test of a fully electric vehicle that could be for a police vehicle. I know that we have many vehicles out on the street, and there have been concerns about why do they keep the cars running. It's to keep the systems cool. They have a lot of computer and electronic equipment in those cars. But if it was a fully electric vehicle, then we would be helping our environment with just that. And then in addition to that, our transportation department is looking at how do we move forward with more fuel efficient or alternative fuel vehicles. This is a challenge, but it's not something that we can't overcome. So working with the community and the staff, and then our regional and state partners to move forward with implementing that plan.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is provided by Cindy DeOrtman. Will you advocate for more electric car charging stations in various places? Will you improve on the August 20th, 2019 resolution establishing greenhouse emissions and renewable energy goals? Thank you and good luck.
Thank you, Ms. Dortman. I'm sorry if I said your name incorrectly. So the question was, will I encourage more electric vehicle charging stations? And the answer to that question is yes. Our transportation system is moving forward towards with more electric fleet. And I don't believe that it's necessarily the city's responsibility to be implementing all of those charging stations, but working with community partners. Currently, the city does have charging stations at the transit center, charge point stations. They are the trickle charge, and you can pay for the fast charge. The city currently has infrastructure and conduit in to implement additional charging stations, and that was put in with the sidewalk project in approximately, I believe it was 2014. So there's additional conduit in place, but working with properties businesses and nonprofits, and the community in terms of where those charging stations should go. And then really I would ask the sustainability coordinator to play point on that. I would not take that on as a specific responsibility of the city manager that I would be working on, but I would delegate that to the appropriate staff person. And again, in terms of the greenhouse gas emissions goals, would take request that staff work on that. That is something that as city manager I would do, and then make the recommendations to the council, and the council would be the one to adopt a policy, and then carrying out that direction, and the policy would be my responsibility.
Thank you. The next question was provided by Seth Fertney. Please detail your intended leadership role in city leadership for sustainability, including vision and experience in successful implementation of sustainable action plans. What would you do to improve city sustainability practices? How would you encourage and assist citizens to upgrade their homes and businesses?
Can you please read the question again?
Yeah, I'll read it slower too. Please detail your intended leadership role in city leadership for sustainability, including vision and experience in successful implementation of sustainable action plans. What would you do to improve the city's sustainability practice, and how would you encourage and assist citizens to upgrade their homes and businesses?
All right. Mr. Fertney, thank you for this question. So would be to continue moving forward with the implementation of the sustainability action plan, delegating the responsibilities to our technical experts in staff, so the sustainability coordinator, and making sure to that she has the appropriate staff time and space to be able to work on those projects. That is something that is critical. In order to move forward the projects, the staff time needs to be available to move that forward. And then encouraging working with the sustainability working group to take that next step into the community. That is critical, really, because our sustainability action plan is for municipal operations, internally focused. My vision would be that we would move forward with that plan and continue to update the plan on a regular basis. I am a firm believer that long-term plans, even implementation focused plans, should be updated on a regular basis. Depending on the plan, it could be anywhere between 3 and 5 years for each of those plans. So I do know that the Sustainability Action Plan was revisited recently. So within the next couple of years, revisiting that again to ensure that we're moving forward and it still meets the goals and visions and has those metrics that we need to be looking at. Sustainability is a ever-growing and ever-increasing important section of things that we work on as the city. So making sure that we're still on point with that. In terms of my experience with this, I was the Director of Transportation and Sustainability in 2015 and oversaw the Sustainability Division. How would I improve practices? Again, implementing that sustainability plan, working with our core team, which is an interdepartmental team, cross-departmental that breaks down silos, and working with that team to conduct analysis on all the things that we're doing. It's a great way that we have internally to implement that plan and ensure that we really are holding each other and ourselves to the highest standard to ensure that we are doing what we can to move forward in achieving our sustainability goals. And then in addition to that, I would encourage the last piece. Encourage improvements in our community to upgrading their houses. So I believe working with Forecore and really being a conduit to connecting our community to Forecore and what they have to offer. So the Forecore program with the home energy audits and the incentives. If the city gets into a situation where we can partner with Forecore again, I do hope that they apply for the community support funding through United Way. But being a conduit, connection, and partner with our local nonprofits, specifically for CORE, to encourage more sustainable upgrades to homes in Durango. We do have a housing stock that definitely could use, in some areas, could use some improvements. I can say personally, we did upgrade our house and did a home energy audit and made those improvements, and it has made significant impacts to the amount of energy that we use, how cool our home stays in the summer, how warm it is in the winter, with reduced resource use. So I'm a huge proponent of that.
Thank you. The next question is provided by Lee. I believe first name and last name are the same.
Okay.
Do you have any plans for the bus line to be logically assigned to areas which are rich in job opportunities and or serve these vital needs of all persons of all income levels, such as the Three Springs area, Mercy Hospital, etc.? How would you increase ridership and make public transit an attractive option during this pandemic?
Lee, that is a phenomenal question, and I think it's a very important question. I mentioned a Venn diagram with transportation at the center earlier, and transportation connects our community to all of its needs. And a healthy, vibrant transportation system that meets the needs of all users is a lifeline to a community. I am passionate about transportation and access. We have an aging population. And if any of you out there have ever had your ability to drive, be it with a surgery or injury or other impairment, disability, taken away from you, it is a life-changing experience. So the city of Durango has the multimodal master plan, and there is a transit vision within that plan that has 15-minute headways around Durango. That is Durango's vision that was approved and adopted in the multimodal plan by City Council. And that has routes to Three Springs at 160 West, Crestview, the entire city of Durango, and also provides the paratransit service, which is the dial-a-ride door-to-door service for seniors and disabled. And that is the vision. Where we are with that is funding is our crux. And I will also say that if the money came tomorrow and someone delivered a check or a pot of gold to the doors of the city of Durango, we would not be able to up and run that service immediately. We do have a challenge with obtaining drivers. So if you're out there looking for a job and you meet the qualifications, we will train you for a CDL, and we are constantly seeking drivers. So that being said, Three Springs is a critical connection. We were able to provide some service with the reduction in service that we had a couple of years ago with our partnership with Roadrunner Transit. And I know that that does not meet the need, but the vision is there. And in terms of increasing ridership, the city has the Way to Go Club, and we have a travel training program through our mobility management program, which is a 5310 grant funded through the pass-through through the state of Colorado. And this provides training and mobility for mobility management to help folks understand how to ride the bus. We do know in the transit industry that if you have long head times, meaning more, 30, 45 minutes, an hour and a half between buses, or if the service is inconsistent, so half hour on this hour and 45 minutes another hour and an hour a different time, that's extremely challenging because you're relying on those buses. So increasing ridership, we need consistent service, we need short head times, we need funding, we need drivers. And the vision is there, the plan is identified, council has approved it. And going back to that lodger's tax question, when we look at housing, affordable attainable housing, jobs, transportation, accessibility, looking at that lodger's tax, I believe from what I understand from council is that is one of the reasons that we're looking at that, because the city of Durango does not have a dedicated revenue for transit. Our parking revenues pay for the grant match for transit. And I believe I answered all of that question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Time for one
All right.
more, Mayor?
I think we have time for one more. Thank you.
This was submitted by Bill Carver, the president of the Durango Creative District. What level of public funding do you support for Durango cultural facilities, organizations, and events? And would you support a significant allocation from the proposed lodgers tax for such fundings? And he goes and gives a background, which history, which I suspect I don't need to provide to you.
That's fine, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Carver, for your question. The Durango Creative District is a key facet of the future of Durango. I will say that this is a very challenging question because it is not the purview of the manager to say what should be in a lodger's tax. I would say that and what proportion or amount of money. I think that it is critical that the stakeholders for the lodger's tax work together to identify what their needs are, and then how that pot of money, whatever that percentage may be from the lodger's tax, be distributed. And then working with council, in coordination with council, and I will be there as support and advisor to both the stakeholder group as well as to council, and can help facilitate community meetings and a community process. But it will essentially be council's decision on how much money goes for each of those groups within the ballot language, or if it's a flexible ballot language that will then be flexible into the future to meet the needs of each of the stakeholder groups. I am supportive of the creative district. I think that in partnership last year in communication and the budget process, we demonstrated support and partnership in funding the first funding for the partnership for the Durango Creative District, and intend to have that included. I think it's critical to have that included again in this year's budget as we move through the process that is currently on the list. So there's a good history, and it's part of our future. A creative district is part of our future, and it's critical. So the amount of money, though, will be left up to the council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amber. Make sure I'm not on mute here. I'm not on mute. So thank you, Amber, very much. Appreciate it. And thanks for the general public and to the general public and the stakeholders for those incredible questions. I think we've fielded a broad variety, and thank you, Bob, for fielding those questions and presenting them to our candidates. It's now 7:50, and I'd like to offer 2 to 3 minutes of a wrap up to Amber Blake to cover anything she forgot to say while she had the opportunity, or just give us some final thoughts. So Amber.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brookie. I would like to say that this is a fabulous opportunity, and I thank all of you for your time. And I want to reiterate and reinforce my passion for Durango. My heart is here. And I'm not planning to go anywhere. So I do feel very strongly that a community has to work together, and cohesion and collaboration and a common vision can set us up for an amazing future. And it is critical that we work together instead of against each other. And I feel that not one person, I said this earlier in the interview, but not one person can get it all done, can achieve it all. And not one person with a remarkable staff can get it all done. It truly takes every single one of us in this community to achieve the vision that City Council defines in its goals and will define in its strategic plan. It is partnerships, it is hard work, it is humor, it is compassion, and it is understanding and the willingness to listen to each other that will get us to where we want to be, to continue to create a thriving, diverse, remarkable community that would be the envy of anyone to live in. So that is my vision for Durango, and I need all of you, no matter what capacity I may work in for the city, to jump in and let's help achieve that goal. I also believe that the position of city manager in Durango requires the ability to work in crisis situation. Not only are we experiencing the pandemic, but we live at the wildland urban interface, and we are adjacent to very dry forests. We have had numerous fires in the past, and unfortunately, we will likely have fires again in the future. And crisis management is critical because no matter what the best laid plans are, you throw crisis into the situation, the ability to partner, collaborate, and work with all of the community and those key stakeholders to ensure that the services and the businesses and the schools and the families have their needs met is a key component of a city manager in working with the council. And then finally, I would like to say that I truly hope that whomever the council chooses or however the council decides to move forward, that you can do this together on the same team. I know you all have the same goal to find the right person that can lead and advise you and achieve your goals. I do believe it's very critical that there is consensus and uniform agreement, not divisiveness. And I want that for you, because divisiveness creates stagnation, and whomever has this position, I would love for them to be set up for success so that we can keep this town moving in the right direction and achieve those goals. So thank you for your time. I am honored to spend this evening with you. And I would like to thank all of you as the panelists, Bob, Dean, Dirk, Madrigal, and Crystal, and as well as all of our community members that submit questions and that will listen tomorrow if they weren't able to listen this evening. But best wishes. Thank you for your time, and thank you for being a critical component of what makes Durango great.
Amber, thank you so much. I know this has not been easy for you, but we so much appreciate it. And this has been very, very helpful for the community. And I want to thank you. And with that, let you put your feet up and relax a little bit this evening, and then enjoy the rest of the evening with your kids. So
thank you very much.
You bet, you bet. And with that, I again would like to thank everybody for spending this past 3 hours with us. If you've been able to spend that much time with us, this was a very difficult kind of assembly to have a public meeting of this nature. And I'd like to thank Bob Slavin, from Slavin Management, our consultant, and who continues to help us through this process. To put the basics together, Mitchell Carter, our Public Information Officer, Crystal Tweet, our Human Relations Director, that really helped with the communications and making some of this all happen. Karen Pease, who continues to keep us all organized, and Dirk Nelson, who keeps us legal. So thanks to and City Council for helping me vision what would be otherwise a meet and greet probably in our recreation center for these two candidates. But given the fact that can't happen, we're very appreciative of the questions and level of engagement that all of you have provided. With that, I'll give my final pitch for how you can respond and provide your input. And I'll say that City Council is requesting members of our community to provide feedback on each of the finalists. All feedback will be considered. However, it will be ultimately City Council's decision to appoint a permanent city manager. Please visit durangogov.org/city manager to find a link to submit your feedback. Because this is a public process, your name and address are required to submit the feedback, and all related correspondence may be subject to public disclosure. The deadline to provide the feedback about the finalists is Thursday, August 20th at 4:30 p.m. And with that, I want to thank everybody once again, and with that, we'll conclude this very important engagement session. And thanks to all my counselors out there that hopefully listened and heard the